KSL News Radio. We have you covered.
KSL News, time 8:59. Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Aubrey Withridge.
Well, we do have a stalled vehicle. This is at the south interchange on northbound I-15. It looks like it's moved over to the left-hand shoulder, but causing delays starting in Sandy and going to the south interchange. We do still have a little bit of slowing over the point of the mountain heading into Bluffdale right now, and southbound I-15 in American Fork is looking a little bit slow as well. Cormac?
Delays on southbound I-15 in North Salt Lake. You'll see some slowing start up after you pass the North I-215 interchange. And delays on northbound Highway 89 starting at the mouth of Weaver Canyon are lightening up as people finally get into work. And the crash in Kimball Junction that has been persistent all morning at the intersection of SR 224 and New Park Boulevard still has those lanes closed. It's causing backup on westbound I-80, and that's what it's now reaching all the way to Summit Park. Is the IRS harassing you, garnishing your wages, or threatening asset seizure? Get immediate relief. Contact Utah tax attorney Jordan Wilcox. Visit ntaxworry.com. That's ntaxworry.com. Cormac Bone in the KSL Traffic Center.
Well, we're looking at a high of 61 degrees today, the coolest of the next 5. But right now, it's only 46 degrees in Salt Lake City. Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
9 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour today is the funeral for President Russell M. Nelson, the late president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
We want to bring the house of the Lord even closer to our members, that they may have the sacred privilege of attending the temple as often as their circumstances allow.
You will need a ticket if you want to attend the funeral in person. The church says you can go to the tabernacle at Temple Square up to an hour and a half before the funeral to try to get standby tickets. We'll also be broadcasting the funeral live here on KSL News Radio starting at noon. The Utah Transit Authority confirms an accident between one of its tracks trains and a vehicle. No one on the train was injured, but the driver of the vehicle had minor injuries and was transported to the hospital as a precaution. UTA has put a bus bridge in place for riders between 5600 West and Daybreak Parkway stations. They say to expect significant delays as the investigation continues. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A pilot, nurse, and paramedic were rushed to the hospitals in California after their medical helicopter crashed onto a freeway in Sacramento. Here's Sacramento Fire Department Captain Justin Sylvia.
At that point, there was no truck on scene for extrication tools, just a fire engine. So that captain quickly sequestered the help of multiple civilians to come over and lift this helicopter off of that victim.
Officials say no patients were on board and no one on the highway was injured. Your money at this moment, the Dow down 57 points to 46,638. Coming up, a nice warm-up before the storm. KSL weather's next. KSL News Time, 9:02.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
What was that? That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud phone system. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very...
Calm, I am. Ooma has everything I need to run my business more efficiently, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business comm at ooma.com/radio.
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You've still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Don't say it. Don't say it's bigger than you. It's not. One person can make a difference, and Rescue Mission of Salt Lake can show you how. Winter is here, yet over 500 people every night remain unsheltered in Utah, sleeping in parks, vacant lots, or wherever they can lay their head and find rest. Is that bigger than you? not when Rescue Mission of Salt Lake is here to help. The journey of healing often begins with simple things: a meal, a good night's sleep, a warm greeting. Sponsor a meal for just over $1 or a night of shelter for $7. As a privately funded faith-based organization, the Rescue Mission does not receive federal, state, or city funding. They're supported through your tax-deductible contributions. One person, that's right, you can make a difference and change a life today by saying you'll be part of the solution. RescueSaltLake.org is where you start. It's not bigger than you, because you can make a difference. RescueSaltLake.org.
Hi, this is Derek Overstreet, president of the New Millennium Group and co-host of Stop Working, Start Living with KSL News Radio. Can you imagine what your life would be like if you could retire 3 to 5 years earlier than you thought possible? The things you could do, the loved ones you could spend time with, the memories that you could create. That's what our team at the New Millennium Group does. We'll walk you through the entire process every step of the way. If you'd like to get a copy of the 5-step proprietary plan that will help you retire 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible, give us a shout right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370 or utahsfinancialplanner.com. Listen, most of our listeners right now have a tax problem, not a money problem. There's not enough money in Social Security Medicare as it is. Let us show you how you can significantly reduce your taxes. That's 888-999-6370, 888-999-6370, or utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Here's Cormac Bone.
Heavy delays on northbound I-15 in Midvale starting just before 7200 South and reaching back to the Southtown Mall. A stalled vehicle in southbound I-15 at the South I-215 interchange is in the left shoulder. UHP is on scene and they're causing no additional delays. But that crash in Kimball Junction at the intersection of SR 224 and New Park Boulevard still has those lanes closed and is causing that backup on westbound I-80 that is now reaching Summit Park. Common Spirit, hospitals, clinics, and caregivers, all connected to advanced healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness. Cormac Bone in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather today, our high is 67, warms up to 81 by Thursday afternoon before a chance of rain starts to move in. More rain expected Friday and Saturday with highs dropping into the 50s again. Right now, it's 46 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
Good morning and welcome to Inside Sources. We're a minute or two late starting here, and I apologize for that. And I am not with Holly Richardson today. I'm with Dave Colley, KSL Cold podcast host.
Yep.
And you were here last week with me, and we had such a good time. We thought, I got to get Colley back.
We got to double down. Why
so
not,
let's do it again. So yesterday, Dave, the governor he called it some time ago, a special session of the Utah legislature. And we talked about it quite a bit yesterday. We even had a few guests in here. And people thought correctly that the session was called to deal with the congressional maps. The four ways we're going to divide up the state of Utah so that our congressional districts are sort of equally balanced and not what we call gerrymandered to the point where they had been. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But there were actually 11 or 12 items on the agenda. So the legislature meets, I think it's the day after Martin Luther King Day, for 45 days every year. And they pass legislation. They work really hard. And in the interim between when this session ends and when it starts, they start writing new bills. They start working on things. But it's not uncommon, Dave, that the governor will call a special session to sometimes, and even what happened yesterday, some of it was just to clear up some things that had happened in the general session, some legislation that didn't work, that needed to be tweaked, that maybe the governor had vetoed for whatever reason. The legislature saying, we want to talk about maybe overriding that. So before we get to the congressional maps, I wanted to talk about a couple of other measures. We'll maybe break them down a little bit further that the legislature dealt with, and just sort of get your take on them. But one of them, this is one that I don't know, raises some eyebrows. And I'm an attorney, so I'll bring that bias into this. But it allows the governor to choose the Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court. So historically, we have 5 justices on the Utah Supreme Court, and the 5 of them get together every, 4 or 8 years. I think it's an 8-year term, and they decide who among them will be the Chief Justice. And it's almost always, well, I shouldn't say that. I can recall the Chief Justices just in my lifetime, but they're the more senior of the group usually, not necessarily the most senior, but they've been on the bench for a little while. So the legislature decided they wanted to take that power away from the justices and have the governor make that appointment. He vetoed the legislation. The legislature met yesterday and overrode his veto because after all, they've got supermajority. They can override anything, and they changed it just a little bit. But now the governor in Utah will be appointing the Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court.
Now, Greg, why? Like, what's wrong with the way it's been, or in the view of, I guess, the legislature? What is the argument for this needs to be changed?
So I guess I'll just to give you my honest take.
Please.
The courts, including the Supreme Court, have done some things, including the legislative redistricting, that the legislature has not been very happy with.
Okay.
And they have thought and made reference to the fact that we've got some rogue judges, some runaway judges, some activist judges. Now, let me just tell you this about our judges in Utah. There's not a single judge in our state courts in Utah that was appointed by a Democrat.
Because we haven't had a Democratic governor for many years.
Yeah, 30 years.
Right.
So, and judges just don't stick around
that long.
So every judge in Utah was appointed by, and I'm talking about state judges. Of course, the federal judges, you have your Obama and Clinton and Bush and Trump and whatever. And so, but those are the huge minority of judges. We have dozens and dozens of judges that are appointed by Republican governors, approved by a largely Republican Senate, usually unanimously. So I don't get the concern, but there have been a number of decisions by trial court judges, one on the Better Boundaries issue that we're talking about, that we will talk about, one on, I think it was the unions, or whether teachers could be barred from from organizing. And there was another one after Roe versus Wade was flipped over. Utah had enacted a trigger law to change women's reproductive rights, and that lawsuit was brought. And the judge has put a hold on some of these, and the legislature is upset. So to answer your question, this was sort of a big, a little bit of a diss. I can't think of any other reason to do this, because it's one of those, if it's not broken, why fix it? Who cares who the Chief Justice is?
Right.
And I say that with all respect to the judges, because the Chief Justice has no more power to make a decision than the others. There are 5 justices, and when it comes time to voting, all of them are equal.
Yeah.
I think what the Chief Justice probably has more authority to do would be to set the calendar, to set the docket, to decide, what the order of the cases are, make assignments in terms of who's writing the opinions, although they often will decide that amongst themselves. I think it's a largely ceremonial position, but the governor now will make that decision, and I think it's just a way for the legislature, in all fairness, and I love our legislators. We've had them on our show, but I think it's just a way of letting the judicial branch know,
It's a little bit of it sounds like a signal,
right.
And it's a prestige position to be the Chief Justice of the Utah
Sure
Supreme
it is.
Court.
Right.
And if you run afoul of the other 2 branches of government, they are maybe going to knock you down a peg. Is that
right? Yeah.
Am I understanding
no
that correctly?
question. So imagine this. Imagine that there's a legislation that says the Supreme Court justices will appoint the Speaker of the House, the Senate President.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that's going to fly. Lieutenant Governor, you know what I mean? That come on, it's like that. The House membership gets together and decide who their House Speaker is, who the Senate President's going to be, and then that's usually done with some level of deference to people that have been around and done what they need to do. So, there's no reason for it. It's the law now. It's the law of the land. The only tweak to it is that from what the governor had vetoed to the way the law passed, is that the governor makes the decision. It's not really subject to review, and it's an 8-year appointment.
Okay.
So the Chief Justice will be appointed for 8 years. My guess is that the governor will appoint the current Chief Justice, because he's been around the longest, and or unless he's getting ready to retire or something. But I don't know. It's much ado about nothing. When we're running out of time here, before we get to the legislative districts, which we'll get to later, it was raising, and I have some concerns about raising the berm on the Great Salt Lake so that the south end gets a little more water and the north end to. I wish we had an expert, and we're trying to find one today to tell us what the reason for that is. But the legislature's had the hardest time legislating more water. I mean,
how do you make it?
We can't do that.
We had a record-setting rainstorm the other day. Did they legislate for that?
I hope so. I mean, somebody
There's
did.
a bill at the special session to rain more.
That was an act of God. I mean, that was one of the best things that's happened to our state, in the last couple months. Getting all the water, but the legislature is doing what they can to save the Great Salt Lake. It's dying a slow death, and unless we start getting more water like we did the other day, it's going to be a problem. Well, we didn't even get to redistricting.
Oh, we got plenty of time.
We'll get to that later. October, by the way, is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We're going to talk a little bit more about that after the break.
These Cougars are rolling.
Parker Kingston has the first down and more.
Rocking and rolling.
He's going to go 20, 10, touchdown!
The nationally ranked BYU Cougars put their undefeated record on the line Saturday against Arizona.
It's a 2-touchdown quarter.
Listen to Cougar Tracks all this week from 6:30 to 7. And catch every play on Saturday on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars.
It's game time, yeah. We on the way.
KSL News Radio.
Attention RV owners or RV wannabe owners. It's the used RV blowout sale. RVs from all over the Intermountain West have been sent to Provo Town Center for this RV liquidation event. Repos, buybacks, rental returns, and trade-ins. Blowout pricing. Every RV has been inspected and serviced and ready to go. Free admission, free parking, dealers welcome. The used RV blowout sale. This Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to dusk. Go to UtahRVEvent.com. Sponsored by Paris RV, Provo Town Center, 1200 Town Center Boulevard, Provo. Paris RV is your locally owned, family-run RV dealership. We strive hard to find the very best RVs for the price. With 4 locations, over 1,000 RVs in stock, 42 service bays, and 4 super parts stores. We're sure to help take your family on the best RV vacation. Check out our perfect family bunkhouse trailer, the 26BH, that sleeps 9 for $19,995 or $227 a month. Zero down. Life is short. Enjoy it. North Murray, South Murray, Payson, and Pocatello. ParisRV.com.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. I want you to know that it's the little things that count. Any remodeler can say they treat customers right when it comes to siding, gutters, windows, and exteriors. It's hard to know for sure. If a contractor uses cheap generic nails instead of super grippy ridge shaft nails for your siding, would you even know? If they use cheap $4 caulk to install your new windows instead of paying $9 a tube for the good stuff, could you tell by looking? It all comes down to the details and trust. At RGS Exteriors, we only do things one way, the right way. We never cut corners. We never skimp on details. We never do less than the job requires. That's why we offer our industry's exclusive 10-year everything guarantee. And it's why we have the happiest customers. If you need any gutters, siding, or replacement windows, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsutah.com. That's 801-280-3110 or online at rgsutah.com.
For over 75 years, Duke's Jewelers has been part of Utah Valley's story. Founded in 1948 by J. Melvin Duke, the Duke family has been helping yours celebrate life's biggest moments, generation after generation. Duke's is more than just a jewelry store. They're craftsmen. From repairing a treasured family heirloom to designing the custom engagement ring of your dreams, their expertise is trusted because it's been earned through decades of care, skill, and tradition. When you walk through the doors at Duke's Jewelry, you're not just a customer, you're part of the Duke's family. Because at Duke's, jewelry isn't just about sparkle, it's about legacy, memory, and love. Discover the difference of a family-owned jeweler where heritage meets craftsmanship. Duke's Jewelers, 220 South Main in Springville, or online at dukesjewelers.com. Duke's Jewelers, celebrating love, tradition, and community since 1948.
Confidence is knowing you're ready to handle whatever comes your way. That's what it feels like to take on your workday with Cintas. They make sure your AEDs are up to date, your fire extinguishers are tested and inspected, your floor mats are cleaned and delivered, and your workwear looks good, feels good, and is freshly laundered with the Cintas Apparel Plus program. So are you ready to take on today? Visit Cintas.com and get ready for the workday.
I'm Ed Evans, CEO of Consumer Cellular. Ever wonder why Big Wireless wants you on an unlimited plan? They probably want you to cover the cost of those 20-somethings using all that data every month. But most people 50 and up like me only use 12 gigs or less. Don't get bamboozled by Big Wireless. Switch to Consumer Cellular. Our plans start at just $20, and we use the same towers as the big guys. Join the millions who choose something better, because if you're not using all that data, you're probably getting used.
Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com/facts. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing. See site for additional facts.
At Your Service Pros is your whole home service maintenance pro with 5-star reviews. Get $49 furnace tune-ups, $39 electrical inspection, $75 off repairs. At yourservicepros.com.
Inside Sources.
Welcome back. I'm sitting aside Dave Colley, and when you came in this morning, Dave, you're wearing this suit and tie, and I thought, where's he going?
He knows
because
that it's
sometimes,
radio,
sometimes it's radio. I mean, I go to court after this show once in a while, but I keep my tie close by. I don't usually wear it. But what's the occasion? Are you going to a funeral?
Well, so if you notice, I'm wearing a purple tie and a little lavender on the shirt,
and a purple wristband.
Yeah. So you and I had a conversation yesterday about, what do we want to talk about on the show, and I asked, for the opportunity to maybe discuss the fact that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I made a personal commitment to myself years ago when I started working on the Susan Cox Powell case for what became the Cold Podcast, that on those days when I was talking about not just, the nuts and bolts of the Susan Cox Powell cold case, but also kind of this broader issue that it raised about domestic abuse in its all, various forms, that as a sign of respect to Susan and to others who have gone through those kinds of experiences, that I would, try to dress the part. And so it's just my acknowledgement wearing purple today to draw attention to the fact that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that this is a problem that exists in our community and our families, and we need to break down the barriers and talk about it.
So Susan Cox Powell is a name that I'm a little bit embarrassed I haven't thought about for a while.
Yeah.
And I know maybe a lot of Utahns haven't thought about it as well, but you deal with, cold cases is your life. And remind our listeners about that. Her husband, Josh Powell, was accused of, I don't know that he was ever convicted of, killing her. And part of the problem was that they never found her body. Now, I was a prosecutor for 8 years, and we prosecuted homicide cases without a body because that's not a necessity. It just makes it a little easier. But remind us, get us up to speed on that case as it relates to Josh and his father, who were both really weird. Let's face it, they'd done some bizarre things.
I think anybody who was living here and following the news in 2009 remembers just the oddity of this case. So to totally start blank, December 7th, 2009, Susan, her husband Josh, their two kids, Charlie and Braden, they don't show up for work, and the kids aren't showing up for daycare in the morning. There had been a big snowstorm the night before. So police go to their house, and they think maybe they've had carbon monoxide poisoning. They go inside the house, no sign of them. Later that afternoon, Josh Powell returns with his two boys in the family's minivan, but no Susan, and says, hey, I took this impromptu camping trip on a Sunday night into a Monday. I totally forgot that I was supposed to work today. Where's my wife? I don't know. And over the course of...
Oh, he didn't take her with him, ostensibly.
Correct.
According to him.
That was his story.
Okay.
And so, the West Valley City Police Department is highly skeptical, we'll put it that way. As you noted, Josh Powell was never charged with a crime, never arrested. But he was the suspect in this case. Within a couple of weeks, he ran off to the state of Washington with his sons and moved in with his father, Steve Powell. And long story short, police are doggedly investigating this case. A couple of years go by. They serve a warrant at Steve Powell's house. They discover that Steve Powell, Susan's father-in-law, had a disturbing infatuation, preoccupation with Susan, very inappropriate. And he ended up going to prison in the state of Washington for possession of some voyeuristic materials and child sexual abuse materials. He's since died. Josh Powell ended up taking his own life and the lives of the two children, Charlie and Braden, in just a horrific act of violence in 2012.
It was awful.
Unbelievable.
It was just just awful. I think DCFS or Child Protective Services were at the door. They were trying to check on the children, and then you know better than that. He locks the door and burns the house. And
blows the house up. Exactly right. Yep. And I think later in the show, we'll probably talk about what the aftermath of some of these events have been. I was covering this as a news reporter as it was all happening. And then for years afterward was digging into some of the records that came out because, Susan Powell's believed to be murdered, but her body's never been found. As you pointed out, no one's been charged with a crime. And I was keenly interested in trying to understand what had been going on in that marriage because from the outside, Susan wasn't showing up at work with bruises or anything. And so a lot of people didn't understand that she was going through a form of domestic abuse where, Josh was controlling who she could talk to, when she could leave the house, what she could eat, even though she was the one breadwinning for the family, what she could spend. And, that all kind of culminated in the creation of this podcast that we launched in 2018 called Cold, which is where probably a lot of people, if they know who I am, it's from that podcast.
Right.
It was kind of a big event when that rolled out over the course of a year or so. Last winter, we came back. We've done some bonus episodes where we dig into just some of these lingering questions. So, stuff about the evidence or interviews that like the boys gave to police at certain points in the investigation, comments that, hopefully might someday lead us to better answers about what happened to Susan. But also for me, and going back to the point of wearing purple today, it's just an opportunity to, again, highlight that, Susan's case, her death, is the most horrific outcome for this kind of case. But as domestic violence is happening every day, and it is it's in our courts, it's in our churches, it's all around in our families. And, I think we all bear a responsibility to be aware, to keep our eyes open, and to have those difficult conversations when we see people who are trapped in the middle of it.
And we see this, and I want to talk about something else with you in just a minute, but we see this all the time, especially in my practice. I mean, just what was about 2 months ago in Tremont, officers responded, police officers from the Tremont and Garland Police Department responded on a domestic violence call and were both killed. Two officers were killed. Now, I mean, you talk about the worst case scenario, what happened to Susan Cox Powell and those two little boys is awful. What happened to these two officers is equally bad. And we even had part of their funeral on this show. But domestic violence is something that, I don't know, we have the hardest time dealing with it. We have the hardest time trying to figure out what to do. And I think we do a great job in Utah. I really do. I think our prosecutors, our caseworkers do a great job. But sometimes things don't work out. And what I didn't know until I talked to you earlier today was there was actually a lawsuit filed against the authorities. Was it in Washington
in the state of Washington, yes.
By the Susan Cox Powell family.
Right.
Her family filed a lawsuit, and I never heard what happened with that lawsuit. But apparently they were awarded a judgment.
I mean, as with everything in this case, I could talk your ear off about it, Greg. I'm sure we'll take another segment later in the show because I want to get into it with you. It was a huge, huge award from a jury to Susan Cox Powell's family saying, yeah, the state did wrong putting these children in danger. And, the whole point of that lawsuit for Susan's parents was to send a message to the state of Washington to prioritize the wellness and safety of children rather than the parental rights of somebody who, at that point in time was, again, suspected but never charged of the homicide of the children's mother. So it's a tricky situation for a social worker to be in, to say, the police haven't accused this person of anything, and I can't just unilaterally come in and say, well, I'm not going to give you access to your children. That opens them up to legal liability as well.
Yeah. When you deal with a lawsuit like that, and I do want to break it down later, but there's two aspects to a lawsuit. Of course, one is fault, and the other is damages. And to me, once you get to damages on a case like that, you got two little boys who were killed. It doesn't get any worse.
Right.
It doesn't get any worse. But fault on the part of the state was something to me that seemed like a huge hurdle for the plaintiffs in that case. I mean, DCFS is doing their job, maybe not. I mean, who knows, were there signs, were there things that were missed? I mean, you know what I mean? That's something that a lawsuit like that would have had to establish because the jury can't deal with the money part until they deal with the fault part. And to me, that was a far bigger hurdle, but apparently they overcame that.
They did. I mean, it was in front of a jury, and one of the so just to set the scene for you, that trial started in the state of Washington in February of 2020. I was up there covering it, and then March of 2020 happened. I don't know if you remember March of 2020, but the world shut down.
Oh yeah, right.
This little thing called the COVID pandemic.
Just
started.
A month into that trial,
and so it was very interesting because the trial went on break for several weeks, and then when it came back, it was virtual, and it was one of the first, I would say, big virtual, court tests of like, can we do this virtually
in our country? Yeah,
yeah, really, it was, and so I spent the latter half of that trial at my kitchen table, watching it on a stream. But they went into every nitty-gritty detail, every email sent between the social workers and everything, and trying to understand who knew what when. They were, interviewing all the police as part of that case. And as you point out, ultimately the jury decided that high hurdle of that kind of finding of fault was cleared. And then when you got to damages,
yeah, it got significant. Yeah, I want to talk to you about that later when we come back. But first, on Inside Sources, we're going to talk to the Deputy Director of the Division of Forestry, Fire, and Lands, Ben Steierman, who's going to tell us exactly what I had a question with earlier, which is raising the berm of the Great Salt Lake will look like. Stay with us.
9:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour, a massive warehouse partially collapsed during a fire, and now investigators are looking into the cause. The fire was reported around 8:15 p.m. last night. Salt Lake City Fire Battalion Chief Ryan Meller says they had firefighters on the roof fighting fire in the attic, but were quickly pulled off once they saw signs of collapse.
Because we determined we weren't going to be able to get it from underneath. And so we were prepared for this one to happen. We were expecting it.
All workers in the building were evacuated and no one was hurt. Several businesses were located inside the warehouse. A third man is in custody after allegedly admitting to planting an explosive device underneath a Fox News vehicle in Salt Lake City. Here's KSL News Radio's Heather Kelly.
DNA evidence links Christopher Proctor to the unexploded bomb. That's according to court documents. It also states Proctor told an acquaintance he put the explosives under the car. Proctor is facing arson charges along with possession of an unregistered destructive device.
2 other men have also been arrested in connection to the case. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Business leaders in California, along with several city councils, are calling on Governor Gavin Newsom and the legislature to crack down on copper wire thefts. They want laws passed that would penalize the junk dealers who buy the stolen metal, hoping stricter penalties will deter them from buying it, thus drying up the demand. Your money at this moment, the Dow down 101 points to 46,593. Coming up, you need some sunglasses today, umbrellas maybe later in the week. KSL weather's next. KSL News Time, 9:32.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
And sometimes a deal is so good that they decide to extend it because they want more people to have an opportunity. That's what Bedrock Quartz is doing with their employee pricing deal.
They are extending it through the month of October, so you pay what an employee would pay, and you can get your new kitchen or your new bathroom done before the holidays.
The only limit is your imagination. They have over 100 different options for countertops, including quartz, quartzite, granite, marble. They can do bathrooms. What can't they do? They do backsplashes.
And their attention to detail is extraordinary. Andy and I went to their facility in West Jordan where they cut the marble and the quartz, and just to see how meticulous they were with cutting that stone, not to mention the installation process.
Yeah, they do 35 kitchens every day, so they're experienced, they're proficient, and they'll work with you. Whatever you want, they can take care of.
They've got showrooms all over the place in West Jordan, Layton, Murray, Park City, Sandy, Pleasant Grove, Spanish Fork, St. George, and Salt Lake City, but
you can also go to bedrockquartz.com.
Do you have chirping smoke detectors? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Service.
Services, and if you've ever experienced chirping smoke detectors, you already know how annoying it can be. A great first step to try and stop the chirping is to change the batteries. If the chirping continues, it's possible that your smoke detector has gone bad. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't even realize that manufacturers recommend replacing the smoke detector altogether after 10 years. If you remove the smoke detector from the wall, on the back you should find a date of when it was made. Do a little math and you'll know how old it is. Now, Any Hour Services knows being a homeowner means you've got a list a mile long of things to do around the house, and check my electrical system probably isn't one of them. That's why we've put together this radio special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive inspection of your electrical system that includes testing those smoke detectors and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. Call Any Hour Services to schedule it. 801-443-7300. 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
Hey, this is Dan the Laptop Man from PC Laptops. Myth. You might have heard that you need to spend a fortune these days to get a powerful computer. Correction. At PC Laptops, we wanted to prove that wrong. So here's the most amazing deal that we've ever done at PC Laptops for you in over 30 years. The new 2025 S1 desktop or SM3 laptop for only $999. You heard that right, $999. You get a blazing fast processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and over a terabyte of blazing storage for $999. What else do you get? Lifetime service warranty, and we have 12 months special financing on approved credit. Take one home today. Hurry in right now because supplies are limited, because at PC Laptops, we love you. Just check us out at PCLaptops.com. $999, PCLaptops.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Let's check in with Cormac Bone.
Still seeing a crash on eastbound Bangalore Highway just before you merge with I-15 and Draper. They are in the right shoulder and causing no additional delays. Also, a stalled vehicle on southbound I-15 at the South I-215 interchange, causing some slowing in the area after the tow truck pulls away with the final cleanup. But the heaviest delays are on westbound I-80. Traffic is almost backing up to Summit Park due to ongoing cleanup of a crash in Kimball Junction at the intersection of SR 224 and New Park Boulevard. Arctic Spas, hot tubs, and swim spas with stores in Salt Lake, American Fork, and St. George. Comfort with multi-level seating, 100% massaging jets, and adjustable pillows. ArcticSpasUtah.com. Cormac Bone in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny skies today, a high of 67 degrees. Clear skies remain through much of Thursday, and then a high of 81. Right now, it is sunny and 48 degrees in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
Among other things that happened in yesterday's special session was a bill that dealt with the raising the berm of the Great Salt Lake, and I'm alongside Dave Colley this morning talking about what happened at the legislative session yesterday, and I kind of butchered my own definition of that, but it was House Bill 1001, which permits the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands to raise the berm at the causeway to as high as 4,192 feet to manage salinity. Now, I don't understand what the purpose of that is, but we have somebody who does, and that's the Deputy Director of the Division, Ben Steierman. Ben, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
And how badly did I butcher what happened yesterday?
Hey, I thought you did pretty good.
Okay, so tell us, first of all, why does the legislature legislate the level of the lake?
Well, I wouldn't say they're legislating the level of the lake. I think they're putting some sideboards on what we can do with this feature that we have on Great Salt Lake that's historically kind of allowed us to manage the salinity of the South Arm. Simply just, being able to put some sideboards to make sure that we don't follow. Well, I guess they don't want us to dry up the North Arm. That's probably most simply stated. That's a good reason there, is that they want to make sure that we're managing for both sides of the lake. We have done that, but that's a way for the legislature to affirm that that's their intent as well.
So Ben, I'm trying to think about for folks who aren't as familiar as I imagine you are with the nuances of managing the Great Salt Lake, you think, oh, it's just a big puddle out there. They might know Antelope Island or, the Spiral Jetty, which would be, North Arm, South Arm. What is the purpose of this berm? I seem to recall within just the last number of years that it was actually cut lower to allow more water transfer from north to south. Am I getting that right?
Well, it's kind of. Let me give you a little bit of background on it. So
Please.
there's a causeway that goes across the Great Salt Lake. It was originally a wooden trestle causeway, and when that began to fail in about 1959, they put in a rock-fill causeway, and the north and south arm were only connected by 2 culverts. And all of the major inflows to the lake come into the south arm, so that would leave the north arm only receiving inflows or major inflows from what it gets from the south arm. So that made the north arm hypersaline to the point where it really was at most times saturated with salt. So the south arm is where all the ecological activity happens. So there's a certain salinity threshold that we want to keep it at, usually between about 120 to 160 grams per liter, or 12 to 16% if you're simplifying it, on the south arm during the fall months. And that supports the brine shrimp and brine flies. So in about 2012, those 2 culverts began to fail, and the railroad actually decided to work with the Army Corps and abandon those culverts. And as mitigation, they put in what they call this breach. It's about 150 feet wide, and that opened up the flows between the north and south arm. But there was some concern that because the north arm water, or brines, are more dense, that we could receive a lot of inflows from the north arm back into the south arm, and it could make it too salty. So they put in what they called this berm, and they had to manage it with a certain salinity level for a period of 5 years. They were able to accomplish that, but that was about the same time. They did that in 2016, and about the same time we started to hit record lows in 2022. So they got through their 5 years, and the way the agreement worked was that if the state ever wanted to modify that berm again, we had to take on the long-term management of that berm. And because we hit those that all-time low, salinity started to spike in the south arm. And so the first time we modified it, we raised it just to kind of block that bidirectional flow. So it kept the north arm heavier brines from flowing back into the south arm. But because we had another bad winter, we actually, the next year, we raised the berm all the way up to act more as like a dam. So this time, the idea was to dilute the fresh water dilute the south arm brines with the fresh water that would flow in, and then we could strategically decide how much salt and water we wanted to push to the north arm as we lowered it. But then we had 2 really good winters. Nature actually took the berm down for us. It created a little bit of a notch, and we've allowed it to just flow freely since then. So right now the lake is within about a half a foot of each other. Salinity is about as good as it could be for where we're at. So things are looking really good, but there's a lot of other objectives in managing that berm that are enumerated in the bill that just passed, and they are not new objectives, but they're allowing us to consider things like microbialites and other ecological factors in management of that berm as well.
So what's the magic of 4192? Is that, first of all, are we well below that now, or is that a number that we're close to, the 4,192 feet?
4192, 4192 there's no magic behind that number. I think 4192 is simply a number that represents a few different things. There is a kind of like a bathtub ring of microbialites at that level that when we can keep those covered, that's really good for the ecosystem, for brine flies and some of the migratory birds that rely on that. So that's one benefit to that. Last time we raised the berm, to block it off, it was to 4192. It does kind of represent a good place for being able to manage the salinity and the flows. But also, when things are above 4192, we're generally in a condition where things are looking better for the lake.
Right.
So we're really, most of the time we're managing that berm, it's when we're at those lake levels that are less desirable, those lower lake levels.
So sufficient to say, though, Ben, that this is something that DNR was, I'm imagining, working with the legislature on, because it sounds like there are some very technical objectives that the state would like to see done with the lake. You need the legislature's help and approval, and this bill was aimed to give your agency the power to do that. Am I getting that right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we learn more every year, and so we keep the legislature apprised so they can help us to ensure that the laws support the actions that we need to take to manage the lake, based on the conditions that are present. So there's been new legislation regarding that berm almost each year for the last 3 years to kind of fine-tune that, and I think with the special session, we've got it right.
Ben, it might be early to give this diagnosis, but Saturday we had record rain along the Wasatch Front, including Tooele and Salt Lake counties, which both, I think, drain into the Great Salt Lake. At least some of their waterways do. Do we know how that I don't know, we had like 2.5 or 3 inches. It made a difference with respect to the lake?
Yeah, so I haven't looked to see what the measurable difference is on the gauges, and sometimes that takes a minute to catch up. But I do know that it came up a little bit. Usually, when you think about the surface area of the lake and the direct precipitation, coming up 0.1 or 0.2 inches takes a whole lot of water. So that's about what we saw out of that rainstorm. But that's usually you don't see the lake come up at all this time of year. So that's amazing that it came up, even a little bit.
Thank you. That was Ben Steierman, Deputy Director of the Utah State Division of Forestry, Fire, and Lands, helping us understand the Great Salt Lake and the berms. That was interesting. I actually learned
so did I.
A lot there. I wish we could have kept him on a little bit longer. But we do need to continue our discussion about what happened at the special session yesterday. The Senate and House minority have made no secret about their disappointment in the map that prevailed from yesterday's session, and many Utah political organizations agree. We are going to get the back and forth on that. That's coming up next, streaming live at KSLNewsRadio.com and on the app for KSL News Radio, sponsored by @YourServicePros.
Jump on your brooms and fly to Logan for fantastic fall festivities. It's finally cooling off and we're so glad. Grab your flannel and celebrate harvest season in style, especially October 10th and 11th. Step back in time at the American West Heritage Center for their annual Fall Harvest Festival. See grain threshing with antique machinery, take a pony ride or train ride, and see cider pressing and corn shelling. Or check out the Rock and Gem Show with minerals and rocks and fossils. Oh my! Catch a live performance of the hilarious Broadway hit The Addams Family. Watch it inside the 1923 Ellen Eccles Theater, which really is haunted. Dive into a month full of hocus pocus and hair-raising hauntings on the historic downtown Logan Ghost Tour or at the Haunted River Trail. Traipse through 2 giant corn mazes, visit the North Logan Pumpkin Walk, or check out live theater and music performances and USU football games. Fall in love with fall in Logan. ExploreLogan.com/fall. ExploreLogan.com/fall.
KSL offers the best daily newsletter in the state. It's the 3 things you need to know. Every weekday, we deliver quality and relevant content to your inbox. No ads, no spam, just the 3 things you need to know to be informed about the world around you. Subscribe today. Visit KSLNewsRadio.com or text the word inbox to 57500. That's inbox to 57500.
I'm Jordan Wilcox, your Utah tax attorney. When life gets overwhelming, some things tend to fall by the side.
I'm Carlos Sanchez from Draper, Utah. I was managing a business, helping out a business, doing paperwork and getting paid, and my wife got sick. We filed taxes, but then we got audited. And when I went and talked to the IRS, they didn't give me any choice. The IRS pretty much said, this is what you owe us, when are you gonna pay us? And we're talking quite a bit. But every time I drive, I listen to the radio. Jordan Wilcox, Jordan Wilcox. So I figure there's a reason this guy's on the radio. So I called him.
Put an end to IRS collection and aggression today.
The amount that the IRS came up with, close to $250,000, and the offer in compromise was about $7,600. That's it.
This is Utah tax attorney Jordan Wilcox. Let's solve your IRS nightmare. Visit endtaxworry.com.
Go for it. The outcome, it was worth it. I'm okay.
endtaxworry.com.
You're listening to Leaf Filter Radio, and the guru of gutter protection himself, Chris Coonahan, is here to take your most pressing leaf-related questions.
Hey, everybody, Chris here. I understand we have Ron on the line. Ron, where are you calling from?
Uh-oh. Ron, are you calling from a ladder?
Well, I was. I wanted to ask Chris what I need to do to get my gutters ready to have Leaf Filter installed.
Oh, Ron, you don't have to do anything. A Leaf Filter Trusted Pro will come out and clean out your gutters, realign and seal your gutters, and install Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system.
So I didn't need to get on this ladder?
Ron, Leaf Filter Trusted Pros are in your neighborhood and ready to help. Just visit leaffilter.com/deal to schedule your free gutter inspection and get up to 30% off.
Thank goodness. What was that site?
To get this special radio offer, go to leaffilter.com/deal for your free gutter inspection today and get up to 30% off. That's leaffilter.com/deal for up to 30% off. leaffilter.com/deal. See representative for warranty details.
Temperatures might be cooling down, but fall camping's just warming up. And so is the country's largest used RV show. That's right. We're back in Utah just in time to outfit you for even more fall fun. October 9th through the 11th, we're packing the parking lot at the shops at Southtown with a huge selection of used RVs to fit any budget. Shop travel trailers, fifth wheels, toy haulers, motorhomes, and more, all in one lot. We're talking RVs starting as low as $7,995. No payments until 2026 on approved credit. You'll also find new RVs at the show at used pricing, like all remaining new 2024s, and select 2025s marked down for fall discounts. Plus, get hooked up with specially priced hunting trailers just in time for hunting season. Get more details and find the best deals early at UtahUsedRVShow.com. All this plus free admission to the country's largest used RV show. 3 days only, October 9th through the 11th at the shops at Southtown. Open daily at 11 a.m. Sponsored by Bish's RV. See you there. Stock number 75941, subject to prior sale. See dealer for details.
All in together now, we can make it better, can we do it? We'll rope it up, cause we know how to jump.
Moving and eating better every day can help make you and your kids healthier. Search We Can online to find out more. A message from the Ad Council, HHS, and NIH's We Can program.
And expanded Inside Sources.
We've been talking about the special session of the Utah legislature, which occurred yesterday, and it was one of those sessions, Dave, that was, and I'm alongside Dave Colley, my co-host today, that they had like 11 items to discuss. They started at 9, and they were scheduled to finish at 3, and I think they did.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a lot of discussion, and in part because, to their credit, they had dealt with a lot of these things. They had had committee meetings. They'd had other things happening. In fact, the singular most important issue, in my opinion, that they were dealing with yesterday were the boundaries, the legislative boundaries. And they had if you recall, they had a subcommittee meet and did some public hearings in the days leading up to the special session. They had 2 public hearings. They created 5 maps from that the Republicans in the committee did. The Democrats proposed one. And then the plaintiffs in a lawsuit, which we'll talk about in a minute, proposed a couple of maps too. Well, yesterday we know which map came out of that decision. And not everyone's happy.
Yeah, so producer Cam handed me this little it's not little, this pile of paper of everybody's statements about this. And what kind of stood out to me here, Greg, was, first of all, we're midway through the 2020s here. Normally redistricting is something that we all ignore every 10 years after the census.
Right.
This is unusual that we have this happening. And I think you know far better than I the background on this. There was that 2018 voter initiative in Utah that kind of set the stage for what we're going through right now. But Better Boundaries, the people who really were pushing that back in 2018, this voter initiative, they're not happy with what the legislature did yesterday. I saw the state Democrats are not happy looking at this pile of paper. So what am I supposed to take away from this?
Well, that I think it's an interesting civics lesson, and I say that in all sincerity. So you're right. In 2018, there was a ballot initiative where voters went and said, we want to have created a independent task force to decide how to divide up boundaries of the state. We don't want any more gerrymandering. And the legislature said, look, our Constitution and our laws say that the legislature deals with elections and deals with those issues. The voters don't. And so we had this, to me, fascinating debate between who decides laws,
right?
The legislature or the voters. The legislature saying, well, you guys vote us into office. If you don't like what we're doing, vote us out. And the voters are saying, well, once in a while you don't get it, so we're going to propose our own. This whole idea of ballot initiatives, we've heard that we don't want to be in a state where ballot initiatives rule the day, but we're really not. In 2018, as you said correctly, there were 3 ballot initiatives in Utah. One dealt with medical cannabis, legalized marijuana, which the legislature tweaked and changed. And I think the people in the ballot initiative were upset at that. One dealt with expanded Medicaid in Utah, which the legislature tweaked and changed, which is you can't just write a law and just have it enacted. And the third one was Better Boundaries. They said, let's set up a commission, an independent commission, have them draw these boundaries, and that will be what we do. The commission met, they submitted boundaries, the legislature said thanks, but no thanks, and drew up their own. So there was a lawsuit filed, and the lawsuit dealt with a couple of issues. One, who decides? Who decides? Do citizens actually get that? Or is the legislature right that, hey, mind your own business? You vote us in to do these important things. Let us do it. That decision hasn't been ruled on yet. What the judge did decide was that in the interim, what the legislature has done was illegal, inappropriate. Now, that's certainly going to be appealed in the days or weeks, years to come. And so she said, the trial court judge said, draw some fairer maps. What the legislature had done before, and I think what got them in a bind, was they divided Salt Lake County 4 ways.
Right.
In fact, if you go into Mill Creek area, you can almost walk between the 4 legislative districts. And people thought, well, that's gerrymandering at its worst. But the legislature's like, well, so invite new legislators.
Right.
We had to do something. So the judge gave some ruling, and there was actually the Better Boundaries Commission and others that said, look, you can't just – there are certain things you shouldn't do. One, you can't take into account politics. Now, everybody knows.
Good luck with that.
Even the ones you're reading from the Democrats are upset because, hey, Democrats are not fairly represented.
Right.
They're not entitled to be. There's actually a case going on in the United States right now, and I think it's in Louisiana, where blacks are saying that they're being improperly excluded by gerrymandering. That is a case that has some teeth because that's a protected class. Race is a protected class. Democrats are not a protected class. You don't have a right to be a Democrat. You don't have the right to be protected because of your political affiliation. So the rules, the Constitution, equal rights don't apply to Democrat, Republican. They apply to men, women, race, religion, that type of thing. You can't discriminate. But you can discriminate all you want based on, well, I shouldn't say this, based on political affiliation. At least it's not a protected class.
Right?
Right,
yeah.
you can.
Whether ethically you should or not is another discussion.
So that's now the issue before everybody's trying to decide this. So you can't take that into account. But the judge said, look, the state's got 3.5 million people. Divide that by 4. You got legislative districts of some 800-some thousand. Create 4 districts with 800,000 people. Equal. That's not hard. Then do it so that you're not dividing counties too much. And that's a little difficult with Salt Lake County because Salt Lake County has 1.5 million people. So you have to divide
the
it.
math
There's no way you can
Yeah.
do anything but divide Salt Lake County. But you could divide it 2 ways or 3 ways instead of 4 ways. And the judge also said, don't divide cities. Well, believe it or not, Dave, we have a couple of cities that go into different counties. I'm thinking of Bluffdale and Draper, which are part of Salt Lake and Utah County.
Yeah.
So there's a preference to keep cities together as opposed to counties. I don't know whether the maps did that, but there's some situations where you got to divide a city up. You don't want to divide neighborhoods up. You don't want to divide like school districts up, that type of thing. So there were a lot of things taken into account that the legislature had to do when it proposed its maps, and so they thought they'd done that. We interviewed Todd Weiler yesterday and last week, one of the legislators who was not involved in the special group, but he said, look, we looked at what the judge's ruling was, we looked at what the voter preference was, and we've filled that. We have done that with our maps. They submitted 5. They asked the public input during the public input. They said, we like map C the best. If you want to have some input, tell everybody you like map C.
Right.
Of course, everybody knew what was going to happen. They had their special meeting, the committee, yesterday at 8. By 8:10, they'd voted on map C.
Which tells you it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, it was a foregone. And that's the one that now is at the 4. Although there were 2 that were submitted by the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, which could also be considered. So,
meaning that goes before the judge, right?
Right.
So the legislature has said this is the one we want.
Right.
They're protesting the whole process.
Right.
But if we're being
exactly
forced to do this, here's the one that we would give you. But at the same time, the Better Boundaries folks and the plaintiffs, as you said, they're saying, well, wait a minute. We've gone through our independent version, and we're going to put this in front of the judge, and now it's ultimately on this district court judge in the state of Utah to decide.
Right. You said it much more concisely than I did. So the judge is going to have what she's calling an evidentiary hearing. In other words, bring in your experts, bring in your people that have these nice letters after their name, PhD and whatever, and have them tell us how this map fits the parameters that I've set up, how it is not dividing cities and counties any more than it has to, not dividing neighborhoods, not dividing people, and not taking into account politics, Democrats, whatever, and is fair. So she's going to have an evidentiary hearing, and both sides are going to present their evidence, and they're experts, and say, based on my studies, I'm a statistician or whatever they are, this map fits your parameters, Judge. Like you said, whether or not any of this is fair, the Supreme Court's to decide later. But we've got an interim election.
Yeah, there's a ticking clock, right?
Midterm elections are in 2026. The lieutenant governor is saying, hey, can you let us know what our boundaries are so we can start getting information?
We kind of need to know who's in what.
So she said our elections clerks and lieutenant governor's office wants to know by November 10th what the boundaries are going to be. So, yeah, we're 5 weeks away from that. We're going to have the evidentiary hearing.
Yeah.
I'm all tongue-tied here. For the judge, she's going to make a ruling, and hopefully we'll have that done. But we're going to have, no matter how you look at it, we're going to have different boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so you also have to feel a little bit sorry for our four current legislators. Who are, what neighborhoods are they going to hit? Anyway.
So what I'm getting from you, Greg, is this is a giant mess, and it's going to be messy for a while.
A little bit, but hopefully it'll be cleared up. We're going to talk about some other issues regarding this bill when we come back.
KSL Salt Lake City. From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
10 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour, the funeral takes place at noon today for President Russell M. Nelson, the late president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We'll carry the services live right here on KSL News Radio. Dozens of firefighters spent the night attacking a large warehouse fire in Salt Lake City overnight. The fire was first reported just after 8 last night in the area of 900 South and 700 West. Firefighters found the fire burning in the attic of the building that houses several different businesses. Part of the roof and a wall collapsed. No one was injured. This morning, investigators are trying to find the cause of the fire. Our top national story this hour from ABC News, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi questioned by members of the Senate Judiciary this morning. Here's a back and forth between Bondi and Senator Dick Durbin over the Jeffrey Epstein files.
And the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memo stating, quote, there's no incriminating client list. Why was the July 7th memo unsigned?
The July 7th memo came from the FBI and the Department of Justice. Director Patel answered those questions very clear. And, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that.
We'll continue to monitor that hearing. Your money at this moment, the Dow is down 164 points, 1/3% to 46,530. Coming up, it's sunny today, but cool. KSL weather's next. KSL News Time, 10:01.
A reminder about the simplest way to get updated for your day.
Hit your KSL preset when you jump in the car, and we'll take care of the rest.
Hear key news updates and traffic reports.
Andy and Amanda from 5 to 9 in your car.
KSL News Radio at 102.7 FM.
Cooler weather. What a relief, unless you have old drafty windows. Soon the heat will escape through the cracks and your energy bill is going to go through the roof. So now's the time to call Advanced Window Products and get brand new state-of-the-art custom windows and frames at factory direct pricing. The factory is right here in Salt Lake City, where they've been building precision windows since 1986, and you're going to save a lot of money since there's no middleman markup. You save 30, even 40% on your new windows. Even better, call now and they'll give you an extra $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. Double pane argon-filled windows with a low-energy triple coating, any style, any color, and Advanced Windows gives you a lifetime warranty. If you have an issue, they're not 10 states away. They're right here in town, and they offer 0% 60-month financing. So make the call now. Get $2,500 off. 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or go to advancedwindows.com.
You've got your whole life ahead of you, so choose a Medicare plan you can count on.
And that's what you get with a Medicare Advantage plan from United Healthcare. With more than 45 years' experience serving its members, United Healthcare has plans with low monthly premiums that fit your life today and as your needs change tomorrow. The Medicare annual enrollment period ends December 7th, so go to uhc.com/Medicare today. United Healthcare Medicare plans. It's Medicare coverage Utah can count on.
Worried about market losses? If headlines are keeping you up at night, it's time to take control. Hi, I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and I know you've worked hard to save. But in times like these, what if can turn into what now? If you're planning to retire or are in retirement, you need a strategy that helps protect your future. At Trajan Wealth, you can capture market gains, protect your account from losses, and guarantee income for life. Right now, you could receive a bonus of up to 30% or annual growth of up to 10% for retirement income. You heard me right. An upfront bonus of up to 30% or annual growth of up to 10%, all guaranteed to boost your lifetime income in retirement. Don't leave your future to chance. Plan with confidence. Call Trajan today at 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Annuity guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company, DBA, in most states, as Trajan Wealth Insurance Solutions.
The KSL News Radio Movie Show comes to My Hearing Centers Friday from 10 to 1. But first, discover what My Hearing Centers can do for you. My Hearing Centers uses advanced technology to diagnose and treat hearing loss. These comprehensive evaluations determine the best treatment options. Then enjoy lifetime support with regular check-ins, cleaning, and maintenance. Call My Hearing Centers at 801-701-1629. 801-701-1629 for more details. My Hearing Centers has offices from Ogden to St. George.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Here's Cormac Bone.
The delays on westbound I-80 are letting up after the crash in Kimball Junction finishes cleaning up. The lanes are open now as they get the car on a tow truck in the shoulder. We are seeing normal congestion on eastbound Pioneer Crossing and Lehigh due to the construction. Delays start at 7800 West, then it's slow and go until the merge with I-15. But I-15 itself is looking pretty good with no delays or accidents from Ogden to Provo. No matter the weather, your feet can feel fantastic. Find the Good Feet location nearest you at goodfeet.com. Cormac Bone in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather today, we only get up to 67 as the high in Salt Lake City, but then we see a warm-up, 75 Wednesday, 81 on Thursday. Temperatures drop over the weekend when another storm system moves in. Right now, we're up to 52 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I'm alongside Dave Colley today from KSL Cold podcast.
Yeah.
And produced actually one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to, the Uinta Triangle.
Well, thank you very
I'm
much,
recommending that to anyone. But let's talk further about this, the congressional maps that were drawn up and how they were drawn up. And we have with us Senator Brady Brammer to talk about what happened and how it got to this point. Senator, thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure to be with you.
So I'm confused about one thing. We came out of the session yesterday with a nod toward Map C, but then there's this other legislation that you can help me with that maybe will help us prevent this from happening again, and that's Senate Bill 1011. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So what that is, when Judge Gibson issued her ruling in August, she noted that the language of Prop 4 is, quote, general and nonspecific as to what statistical models should be used to test whether or not a map is symmetrical, whether it has a partisan bias or an unfair favoring or disfavoring of a political party. And she noted that the legislature retains discretion to choose which statistical methods should be used both by the courts and in determining the map. And so we, given that invitation, we passed legislation after studying it out, after reviewing all of the academic articles on the statistical reviews, and after reviewing the cases that have gone forward. in this space, and we provided 3 tests by which the court can objectively measure whether or not a map is unfairly gerrymandered, either to crack, meaning split everything up, or to pack, meaning put everything too tightly into one district, which both of those are kind of the telltale signs of gerrymandering.
So this bill that you took up in the special session yesterday, when does it go into effect, and what impact might it have on the current court case that we're talking about here?
Yeah, so it is currently in effect. It went into effect immediately upon signing of the governor, which he did, and that's because it passed with 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate. And the impact will be that this is what the judge will need to follow in her decision as to determining whether or not a map unduly favors or disfavors any political party.
So, Brady, let me ask you this. The 3 tests proposed by this legislation, what are they and how are they different than the tests that the judge gave to the legislature in proposing the maps that we ultimately dealt with yesterday? I don't know if that makes sense.
So number one, none of these are different than any of the tests that the judge gave to the legislature. So all of those tests were followed by the legislature. Those are things like how many counties are split, how many cities are split, are there common communities of interest, things like that. But then there's there's about 7 or 8 criteria, and this is one of the criteria as to whether or not it unduly favors or disfavors a political party. And so this test is only applicable to that portion of Prop 4.
In that it excludes that consideration?
No.
Okay.
No, it says you need to consider it, and here are objective metrics by which you may consider it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, and those are the 3 tests that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I'll tell you kind of why that matters.
Sure.
There have been, so we've all seen the controversy. Is it a blue dress or a gold dress? Is it an old woman or a young woman in the drawing? These are what are called, these are things that in the eye of the beholder, people view things differently depending on their personal biases or other influences in their lives. However, what we're looking for is, does this objectively show some kind of unfair and unduly favoring towards a political party or not?
Some of the pushback that I've seen, or at least I guess debate over this, Senator Brammer, has been a question of whether or not these 3 tests taken together are too narrow. What's your perspective on that?
2 of these are the tests recommended by the Democrats. And then after we accepted them, what they said was, well, we don't want any tests that anyone would be able to use. And they refused to provide any other objective metrics by which to measure this. And here's kind of the problem. We only have about 13 to 14% of the state is registered Democrat. It's really hard to draw a map that guarantees a Democrat seat without political gerrymandering, unless you are refusing to look at objective data. If you look at objective data, you can have competitive maps. And I think that's what you see in Map C that was adopted. The Democrat Party has already come out and said at least 2 of these districts are competitive, and we're going to put a lot of money into funding to try to win these seats. But those that don't want an objective criteria, they don't want it because they can't meet any objective criteria as to whether or not a map unduly favors or disfavors. And that includes the plaintiffs in the lawsuit.
Okay, that makes sense. I think I'm understanding. And so this legislation, I was concerned about the retroactivity of it, but you explained that really well, that if it passes both houses by 2/3 majority, the legislation can become effective immediately. I guess retroactive is not the right word, but so when the judge has her evidentiary hearing in a couple of weeks, she will be guided by this new law. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, interesting. Look, do you mind shifting gears for just a minute, Brady, and talk to us about
Sure.
the legislation dealing with the selection of the Chief Justice of the Utah Supreme Court and what it does and why it's important?
Yeah, so what this does is it follows how pretty much every other non-elected official is is appointed within our state. So the governor appoints and the Senate confirms. And part of that is driven by and that's allowed under Article 8, Section 2 of our Constitution, says that that process for choosing a Chief Justice is entirely governed by statute. So it has to go through the legislature. And so we are changing it to some degree because there has been a drop-off in the number of decisions by our Supreme Court. So from 2000 to 2020, they were averaging between 80 and 100 decisions per year. And since 2023, they have averaged anywhere between 27 and 45 decisions per year.
And so you think that could potentially be driven by the leadership, the Chief Justice?
I think it provides some accountability, and it allows for the Chief Justice to focus on and to really talk to the Chief Justice before they go in about what their plans are, about how they intend to administer justice. Another concern that we have is, we have, on death row, and I have my own concerns about the death penalty, but if we're going to have the death penalty, they shouldn't be on death row for 35 to 40 years. This is not a trip through the wilderness like Moses had, towards the fulfillment of that conviction. Our courts need to administer justice and make sure that that justice is delivered. And so we do have some concerns with that type of issue. And I do think that this will help because we'll have a better idea as to how a Chief Justice, who is the primary administrator of the courts, intends to behave with those decisions and how things are done.
Very interesting. Thank you, Senator Brammer.
Yeah, it was helpful. Thanks, Brady. That explained a lot about these two bills to me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand what was behind them. Of course, you always think there's politics behind them, but there's another explanation, and I think Senator Brammer gave us a very good outline of what that is. Whether you agree with it or not, at least that was a very thoughtful argument, and I appreciate him joining us this morning. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Deseret News reporter Lois Collins, who's going to break down exactly what medical costs have to do with the government shutdown. That's coming up next, streaming live at KSLNewsRadio.com and on the app for KSL News Radio, sponsored by At Your Service Pros.
We honor President Russell M. Nelson.
Can family life endure beyond this period of mortal probation? Yes.
On Tuesday, KSL will broadcast the memorial and final tributes to President Nelson from noon until 2.
My dear brothers and sisters,
remembering President Russell M. Nelson.
The best is yet to come.
Starting Tuesday at noon on KSL News Radio.
Temperatures might be cooling down, but fall camping's just warming up, and so is the country's largest used RV show. That's right, we're back in Utah just in time to outfit you for even more fall fun. October 9th through the 11th, we're packing the parking lot at the Shops at Southtown with a huge selection of used RVs to fit any budget. Shop travel trailers, fifth wheels, toy haulers, motorhomes, and more, all in one lot. We're talking RVs starting as low as $7,995. No payments until 2026 on approved credit. You'll also find new RVs at the show at used pricing, like all remaining new 2024s, and select 2025s marked down for fall discounts. Plus, get hooked up with specially priced hunting trailers just in time for hunting season. Get more details and find the best deals early at UtahUsedRVShow.com. All this plus free admission to the country's largest used RV show. 3 days only, October 9th through the 11th at the Shops at Southtown. Open daily at 11 a.m. Sponsored by Bish's RV. See you there. Stock number 759418. Subject to prior sale. See dealer for details.
At Common Spirit Health, we know that lifelong health and well-being starts with primary care. So we have doctors and providers who see you, hear you, know you, and understand you. Because understanding you means understanding your needs. And that leads to a deeper knowledge of the prevention, wellness, and treatment options that may be best for you. It's primary care that treats your whole family like family. It's primary care with human kindness. Discover all the ways you can find and connect with a primary care provider at mountain.commonspirit.org.
This March, Wendy's is fueling the madness with amazing deals on their hamburgers made with fresh, never frozen beef.
Like a juicy Dave's single for $1 and a fresh $2 Dave's double with in-app offer.
It's such a good deal, we wrote a little ditty about it.
Get it for $1. Dave's single, order in the app. Dave's single, get it for $1. Choose wisely, choose Wendy's official hamburger March Madness.
Limited time offer. Participating U.S. Wendy's. See offer details and redeem at Wendy's app. Account registration required. Fresh beef available in the contiguous U.S. and Alaska.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Annie's first oil change wasn't as hard as she thought because she went to AutoZone, where a friendly AutoZoner helped her find the right oil and save on an oil filter. He explained the job and showed her free how-tos on AutoZone.com. When she was done, AutoZone recycled her old oil for free. No hassles, just help. Everything you need, nothing you don't.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Many Medicare health insurance plans are cutting back on benefits, reducing coverage areas, or increasing costs. The Medicare annual election period begins October 15th. Legacy Insurance provides local agents you can count on to help you get the most of your Medicare benefits and to be there for you over the years. Call 801-281-0066, 801-281-0066, and ask for a real agent. Currently, Legacy Insurance represents 58 organizations, which offer 93 products in your area. You can always contact Medicare.gov, 1-800-MEDICARE, or your local state health insurance program for help with plan choices. There are significant changes to Medicare plans this year. Learn more or request help from a caring and local professional by visiting them online at BecauseWeProtectYou.com. That's BecauseWeProtectYou.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
My savings are gone.
Okay, where were they last?
Here, right before I spent them on that vacation to Aruba.
Weird. Not weird. Not saving now means no money later. For free ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
An expanded Inside Sources. Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. We are joined in studio now by a Deseret News reporter Lois Collins. We're all part of the same family, aren't we, Lois? Who is going to talk to us about how the government shutdown is affecting people in ways that maybe we don't appreciate. I mean, it affects our family, Lois, because my wife and son work for the federal government, and they're both what they call essential employees, meaning you got to come to work, but you're not getting paid.
Yeah, I got a couple of those in.
Yeah, so yeah, we all do. We all have people like that, and nobody's. Well, it's easier for me to say losing a lot of sleep over it because I guess the government would be up and running again, but other people are being affected by this as well. Correct?
Yeah, lots of people are being affected, and the bone of contention that is keeping the Democrats and the Republicans from reopening the government is also something that affects people. It's health.
Yeah,
it's health insurance coverage, it's Medicaid coverage.
And that is the core of what we're dealing with here, isn't it?
Right now, there's a disagreement. The Democrats say, we will be happy to give you your votes to reopen the government right now if you will roll back the Medicaid cuts that you made over the summer and if you will agree to extend the subsidies for the Affordable Care Act that are supposed to expire at the end of the year. And the Republicans say, this is a December problem. This is not a now problem. We can talk about this later, but we need to reopen the government. So I think that the Democrats feel like they have a stick, which they don't always have, and it's not that appealing to the Republicans. So it's a really tricky thing. But the bottom line at the heart of it is the subsidies. And if those tax credits are allowed to expire, and by the way, the American people in a big national poll from KFF, they do support the extension of these tax cuts. So, it's not like the people are opposed to it. They aren't. But at the core of it is your people's cost of their insurance, if they don't have insurance through employers, and we all have insurance through employers, would be astronomical. It would go way, way, way up without the subsidies.
I feel like your article, Lois, that I read, your recent article on this, for me, painted that picture better than anywhere else I've seen it in terms of what would the impact of this be to people, right? Because it's it can be especially as you point out, like I'm confident and comfortable in my employer's health care. What does it really matter to me? But the just percentage increase for the people if these subsidies are allowed to expire was like mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We all complain, even those of us that have good subsidized through our employers. We all complain about the costs. But the belief is that insurance for everybody, including those with employer-provided health care, is going to go up 18% regardless. And, that's just kind of what we can expect. But if you lose that subsidy, for instance, there is somebody who makes, one of the examples that was really striking, 60-year-old couple that makes around $80,000 a year. Their insurance right now, they pay 8.5% of their total income in order to get the insurance. If that goes up, it would be $22,000. It would be a quarter of their entire income for insurance. It's, of course, because it's on a kind of a sliding scale, it's going to be much less, but maybe no less devastating for people who make less money. So it just depends on where you are in that 100 to 400% of poverty. And we know in Utah, it's really hard to live, even at 400% of poverty.
And what stood out to me, Greg, too, reading Lois's article, was in Utah, it's mostly kids that we're talking about who would be like hardest hit by this.
Yeah, we have the most kids of any state that are provided insurance through the Affordable Care Act, and part of that is because we have so many people who are self-employed in small businesses. But 28% of our kids would be at risk of losing their health insurance, and that's not counting the Medicaid part. That's counting just the ACA part.
Wow.
Lois, we spoke with a Republican legislator last week about this, and his take, if I can articulate it well, was this. When the Affordable Care Act was passed, it set standards by which people would qualify. When we had this COVID problem, Congress sat down and said, hey, we need to up the ante. We need to increase these subsidies.
Under the American Rescue Plan.
Right.
Yes.
But his belief, Lois, was that was always meant to be a temporary stopgap, and we were never supposed to just rely on that forever.
I think that was the attempt. That was the intent of the thing, that it was going to be temporary. But I think that the way the economy has sort of shifted around, and with inflation and with tariffs, families are struggling more. So there was a national poll that showed that probably 1/4 of adults have skipped meals because they're trying to pay for things. And so it's really complicated because it's a different situation economically now than it was then. And I'm not taking sides in this, but I can certainly understand that there's enough pain to go around.
And it seems like Congress keeps just kicking the can down the road with these continuing resolutions, and that's what's got us hung up now. It's not necessarily, addressing this in its finality, but keeping it on the table at least until November when we can address it again.
Well, and they keep saying we hope that at the polls people will remember the government shutdown, but I also think at the polls people may remember that they lost their health insurance. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how it all plays out. But yeah, there's definitely kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, it seems like that's the political calculus we're seeing play out in real time right now in Washington, right, is between the Democrats and the Republicans. Which issue do you think is going to resonate more with the voters come that time? Is it, the Democrats shut down the government, or is the Democrats saying, hey, the Republicans allowed healthcare subsidies to expire, that's why you don't have health care?
The other thing that's really interesting in this that was pointed out by several people to me is that even those of us who have good health insurance, who kind of can view this with caring personally about one issue and maybe not the other issue, is that when people don't have coverage and somebody absorbs those health care costs, and frequently what happens is the insurance that you have, the cost goes up considerably. So everybody's going to be impacted by this one way or the other.
I mean, you said it's 18% kind of across the board no matter what, which is already a lot.
Yep, health care costs are up that much.
Yeah.
Why do you suppose the Republicans are so adverse to this? Is it just a money issue? Is it just a deficit issue? I mean, because no matter what state you're in, a lot of people are going to lose health care if this goes through. I mean, whether you're in a red or blue state, and Republican legislators have to think there's going to be that burden on them, as you mentioned, that when it comes to reelection. Not, Democrats might think, well, we're going to be blamed for the shutdown, but Republicans may get blamed for we're going to lose our health insurance, and it seems to me that one may be a little more compelling.
Yeah, it's interesting. I cannot tell you what the thinking is on this. I would not even speculate on this because we have seen, I think every one of us could see cuts that have been made under Doge or in other places where they're not the cuts that we would have made, but maybe there are things that we would cut that haven't been cut. We all have different ideas on what should happen. All I know is that this one is going to be painful on a personal level for a lot of people, regardless of what happens.
Well, I mean, that's tragic. And, thank you for writing this article, Lois, and explaining it, because I think a lot of people are not sure. And there's been some misinformation, and I don't want to, cause any consternation here, but it doesn't necessarily involve the Democrats wanting to fund health care for illegal immigrants.
Oh, no, that actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I should have said something about that. The claim is that we want, the government is being asked to put people who are here illegally on the rolls. And that's not the case. That's simply not the case. In either program, there are really strict rules that say they can't be enrolled. So that's kind of a Pinocchio moment, I guess I would call it.
Sadly, it is. And I think both sides have had their own. But that one, it's actually an exclusion to the Affordable Care Act that
it's in both Affordable Care Act and in Medicaid. There are a few cases where people can be on, but when they cut back Medicaid this summer, they also reduced the number of legal immigrants who could get coverage to Medicaid, not just those. There were none that were here illegally, and they cut back those legally who could get access. So that is a false claim.
Right. Thanks, Lois. Thanks for joining us again.
Really great, Lois.
That was really good. And that's a great article. If you haven't read it, it's in today's Deseret News.
Written in my typical fifth grade language.
That's why I could understand it.
Coming up on Inside Sources, we're going to have a conversation with Democratic Representative Doug Owens. Stay tuned.
The sources where we get our news matters.
When you listen to Utah's Morning News, we want you to feel the stories are important to you and trustworthy. This is Amanda Dixon.
And I'm Andy Farnsworth. Join us weekday mornings on KSL News Radio.
10:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Andy Farnsworth. KSL's top story this hour: Utah lawmakers picked a new congressional boundary map during the special session. And late last night, we got word Governor Cox signed the legislation. The map will now be reviewed by the same judge that originally required lawmakers to draw a new map. Democratic leadership doesn't like the way the boundaries are drawn, and Utah Republicans are still appealing through the courts to keep the original map. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: new details being released about the arrest of former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez in Indianapolis. He's currently been released on bond after police say he attacked a 69-year-old truck driver in a hotel loading dock over a parking space. Police say the truck driver first used mace to get Sanchez to stop, but when that didn't work, he stabbed Sanchez multiple times. Here's the truck driver's attorney, Eric May.
My client was just the victim of an unprovoked, senseless attack, and at all times he just tried to defend himself and fight for his life.
Sanchez has been receiving treatment in a hospital. The truck driver is also in the hospital with serious injuries. Sanchez is charged with felony battery. Your money at this moment: the Dow down 183 points, 186 points now, which is 0.4%, down to 46,508. Coming up, looks nice out there, but it's still a bit cool. KSL weather's next. KSL News Time, 10:31.
The Social Security Administration just announced they are now projected to run out of money 1 year earlier than expected. Benefits could be cut by as much as 23%, and the average person could lose more than $100,000 in lifetime income. This news could significantly change when you file for Social Security. Discover how you could get every penny out of your benefits with a free Social Security analysis from Boss Retirement Solutions. If you've saved more than $300,000 and have not filed for Social Security, schedule your free analysis now by calling 801-896-9622. This free, customized analysis could help you get every penny out of Social Security. Call 801-896-9622. That number again, 801-896-9622.
Boss Retirement Solutions is not affiliated with the Social Security Administration.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code POWER to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code POWER for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code POWER for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. The other night, I had the chance to see a brand new play at Hale Center Theater, and it's the musical comedy Murders of 1940. And I'm just going to read what I wrote to Sally Dietlein right after I got out to my truck. I just had to let her know how much I enjoyed it, and I said, a black and white screwball film noir comedy complete with Nazis you have outdone yourself. This is so unique. The entire play, save only one character, is in black and white. Sally wrote back and said, yeah, I think it's the first time we've ever done, and she used this term, grayscape. It is so unique. You are going to love it. And then just down the hall, Sister Act is showing, and all kinds of wonderful performances still to come, like Frozen. We've already got our tickets for our grandkids. Go to hct.org or get your tickets at the box office. And don't forget, get your 2026 season tickets.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Here's Cormac Bone.
There's a crash in Salt Lake City on the transition ramp from westbound 201 to northbound Bangerter Highway. They're blocking the right shoulder but causing no additional delays. And it's a problem-free drive on I-15 both north and southbound from Ogden all the way to Provo. And even I-215 is delay and accident-free wherever you drive it in the Salt Lake County area. When you need the financial products and services for every stage of life, Cyprus Credit Union is there for whatever the future holds. Visit cypruscu.com today. Cormac Bone in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather looking at 67 degrees for a high today, 75 tomorrow, and then 81 on Thursday. Then a good-sized storm system arrives Friday night, which could, does this sound familiar, bring significant rain on Saturday. Right now it's 54 degrees and clear in Salt Lake City. I'm Andy Farnsworth from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
Now, I am not Greg Skordas or Holly Richardson. I am KSL investigative reporter Dave Cawley, but I'm here with Greg Skordas. And Greg, a little bit earlier this hour, we had State Senator Brady Brammer on to talk about what happened at the special session yesterday. I was very interested in his talk about these 3 tests that the legislature has passed into law, effective right now, that are going to be playing a role in this ongoing legal fight over Utah's congressional districts.
Right, and what he's talking about, what he did talk about is Senate Bill 1011 and Map C, which are now being promoted by that came out of the special session yesterday. I suppose over the objection of our guest here, we have Democratic Representative Doug Owens to give us his perspective. Doug, first of all, tell us what happened at 8 o'clock yesterday morning when your select group met to discuss the maps.
Hi, Greg and Dave. Nice to be with you. We met in committee at 8 o'clock before the floor sessions, the full sessions, for the committee to recommend one particular map to the entire legislature. And so the committee voted on that map C, one of the middle of the 5 options presented by the expert retained by the majority. So that's what happened. Senator Escamilla and myself are the 2 Democrats on that committee, and we did not get into debate over that. We'd already made our objections known in the prior 2 meeting, so it was a pretty short meeting.
And that's what we heard. It was over fairly quickly, and then the session began. The special session began at 9 o'clock, and I suppose that this was dealt with fairly quickly there as well.
Yeah, it took some time. It had to the majority wanted to enact the changes to the Prop 4 language before passing the map. So my understanding is the one of the first things out of the chute was the statutory change, and my understanding is that was then run to the governor for signature, so it could be enrolled, passed before the map was approved later in the day.
And is that Brady Brammer's bill, 1011?
Yeah, the one that changed the language of Prop 4. And, I hope you're going to ask my reaction to that, because I got a strong reaction to that.
Yeah, and I'd also like your reaction as an attorney to that. Tell us what you think about where we are.
Yeah, the Supreme Court said in its decision 9 months ago, they said, usually the legislature can change a proposition that's enacted, by ballot measure. And that's sound, that's a sound principle. Usually it's just treated like a statute. A statute can be changed. But in this case, the Supreme Court said that when it alters the government functions, that the legislature shouldn't do that willy-nilly. It should have to have a compelling governmental purpose in order to change that. And so what my objection yesterday was that Senator Brammer's bill went to change the language of Prop 4, and there was no articulated compelling government purpose. The Prop 4 that the people wanted said that all the best data and testing should be used to see if a map is fair, and there was no reason to narrow it. I think it's not a good argument that Diana Gibson, the district court judge, had asked for that to be narrowed, that broad language of Proposition 4. In fact, she specifically said, given how broad it is, you can apply whatever test you want. The expert was free to apply tests to the map, but that didn't mean there was an invitation from the court system to actually narrow it. I don't think that's a good argument.
Now, Representative Owens, we had obviously Senator Brammer on a little bit earlier, and he explained kind of his thought process, or the majority's thought process, in these 3 statistical tests. But I was reading articles about this yesterday after the session kind of wrapped up, and you had some very pointed comments about whether or not you viewed this was being done in good faith, and the potential that this could set the state up for more legal action. I'm curious where you think we're going.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think it was bad faith. I don't think that at all. I think people are well-intentioned. The question is, Prop 4 says you can't, even if you have good intentions, you can't enact a map that's unfair, that unduly penalizes one party. That's the language, unduly impacts, I think. And so even if you have good intentions, which I think my Republican friends have, they have good intentions. They're honest, intelligent, upright people. The question is that map unduly impactful to Democrats in a harmful way? And that's going to fail the test. And I think these 3 tests that were chosen are not the right tests to be applying. And so I was saying, we're going to test the court system all over again because we don't have a compelling governmental reason to be changing Prop 4. The Supreme Court said go apply Prop 4. The district court said go apply Prop 4. Draw the maps in accordance with the Prop 4 criteria. And that said all available testing, not a certain subset. And I think fair testing would show this map is unfair that was enacted yesterday.
Yeah, tell us about that, Doug. What is it about Map C that runs afoul of Prop 4 or I guess runs afoul of the judge's directives?
Happy to do that, Greg. It's important that people understand this. The best test for whether a map is unfair is what they call, you compare it to what they call a neutral ensemble of maps, which is fancy professor speak in political science for just draw a big group of maps. So you set up a computer, and you can do this with a home computer. It's really not even that complicated in the modern world. You set up a computer to draw nonpartisan maps, and you can draw thousands of maps, okay? Harvard University years ago drew 6,000 maps of Utah. And you can do that in a short time with a computer. And then you look at those maps, and and you compare the map you want to enact against those maps, and you say, how far are we deviating from the average that these randomly drawn nonpartisan maps what's the average they come up with, and how far are we deviating? And the truth is, when you draw random maps, almost always you come up with one of the 4 congressional districts in Utah has a competitive district. So the average district has one competitive district. And the 5 maps floated by the expert retained by the committee, none of them showed a competitive district. And the one in the middle, map C, showed the least competitive of any of the 5 sets of districts. So they're not average maps. They don't compare well to a neutral ensemble of maps. And that's the test that should be applied. And there's a variant of that test that's statistically problematic. There's a variant of that test in the statutory change, but it isn't the full-blown neutral ensemble test.
So we heard that this is clearly it passed. It's been signed by the governor. It's in effect, and there was maybe some, I guess, hints on your part that you would be watching to see whether or not this sets us meaning the state legislature, at odds with the courts again. What are you expecting to see happen going forward?
Well, I worried about that because, and I tried to make that known to my friends in the legislature, that if the court system is saying go apply Proposition 4, and then the first thing you do yesterday morning is change Proposition 4, you got to have a compelling reason to do that. So I said, hey, the courts aren't going to love this. You're setting us up for a confrontation again with the court. We didn't have to do that. We could apply any and all tests we wanted to without restricting what tests could be applied and changing the law. So I think, it invites another confrontation with the courts. That's not – we should be more respectful. The legislature should be more respectful of what the courts directed us to do. It's a co-equal branch of government. And just setting up those confrontations is unhealthy because the legislature is the strongest branch of government. It's the 800-pound gorilla. It needs to be respectful and tread lightly when the courts give an instruction. The courts don't do that lightly.
Thanks, Doug. That was Democratic Representative Doug Owens, who shared his time with us this morning for a different perspective on what's happened here. Next, we're going to talk a little bit more about Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're going to do that with Kimmy Wolf of the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition. That's coming up next, streaming live at kslnewsradio.com and on the app for KSL News Radio, sponsored by @YourServicePros.
Hi, this is Derek Overstreet, president of the New Millennium Group and co-host of Stop Working, Start Living with KSL News Radio. Can you imagine what your life would be like if you could retire 3 to 5 years earlier than you thought possible? The things you could do, the loved ones you could spend time with, the memories that you could create. That's what our team at the New Millennium Group does. We'll walk you through the entire process every step of the way. If you'd like to get a copy of the 5-step proprietary plan that will help you retire 3 to 5 years sooner than you thought possible, give us a shout right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370 or utahsfinancialplanner.com. Listen, most of our listeners right now have a tax problem, not a money problem. There's not enough money in Social Security Medicare as it is. Let us show you how you can significantly reduce your taxes. That's 888-999-6370, 888-999-6370, or utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Sign up for KSL Text Alerts. Get breaking news and traffic updates by texting the word news to 57500. Want access to exclusive contests? Text contest to 57500. Jazz fans, text the word jazz for breaking jazz updates. And Cougar fans, text BYU to 57500 for the latest on the Cougars. Message and data rates may apply.
So my mother is thinking of switching from Verizon to Pure Talk, but she's worried the deal sounds too good to be true. Michael, she said, how can those Pure Talk people offer me the same basic service as Verizon for so much less money? I said, Ma, go ask Google how much Verizon spends on advertising and promotions. A few seconds later, my mother said, oh my goodness, $12 billion a year? That must be a typo. I'll tell you what I told my mom. It's not a typo. Verizon spends $12 billion a year on advertising and promotions, and their customers are paying for it. Well, Pure Talk doesn't spend that kind of money on commercials. Trust me, I would know. That's why they can offer you and my mother unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data on a crazy fast 5G network for just $25 a month. And if you're a business owner, you could really save a fortune. Dial pound 250, say the words Mike Rowe, and you'll get an additional 50% off your first month. That's pound 250 Mike Rowe. Pure Talk. Everything you need and nothing you don't.
Join KSL News Radio's Amanda Dixon this Friday from 3 to 5 at the Salt Lake NPS store at 1600 Empire Road, npsstore.com.
This is Derek Miller speaking on business. Huntsman Cancer Institute at the University of Utah is reshaping the future of cancer care. With clinics in our communities and collaborations across the region, they're bringing life-saving care closer to more communities. The new CEO of Huntsman Cancer Institute, Dr. Bradley Cairns, joins us with more.
John and Karen Huntsman founded Huntsman Cancer Institute to advance their bold vision to eradicate cancer. Thanks to our dedicated clinicians, researchers, and staff who strive for excellence each day, the movement the Huntsman started more than 25 years ago has solidified Utah as the place leading cancer innovations that transform care across the globe. Huntsman Cancer Institute belongs to you, the people of Utah and the Mountain West. As the National Cancer Institute designated comprehensive cancer center for Utah, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, and Wyoming, we are transforming the way that cancer is understood, prevented, diagnosed, treated, and survived. Recently, we broke ground on our next major cancer campus. Located in Utah County, this new comprehensive cancer center will bring the best cancer care and research closer to hundreds of thousands of people. Together, with patients, clinicians, students, and partners, we're creating a future where cancer is a thing of the past.
Huntsman Cancer Institute is dedicated to ending cancer as we know it by having doctors and researchers collaborate to better understand the disease, developing and innovating to discover life-changing breakthroughs. To learn more, visit huntsmancancer.org today. I'm Derek Miller with the Salt Lake Chamber, speaking on business.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, what are you waiting for? Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Inside Sources.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and there are so many people around this state working hard to keep people informed and safe. My co-host today came in dressed in with a purple tie and a few other purple accoutrements, and I thought, what's up with Collie today? And you told me.
I just wanted to be fancy. No, October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month is something that's always on my mind because of the work that I did on the Susan Powell case. And
that you're still doing.
And still doing, yeah. I was traveling, not for work. I was on some personal vacation time last week, but as I tend to do, I happen to be passing through a community where part of this case, the Susan Powell case, played out. Very small little part, but up in Washington, there's this little town on the east side of the Cascades called Ellensburg. And years ago, I was going through home videos and things from Susan Cox Powell's life, and there was this clip of her and her husband, Josh, walking around this town, Ellensburg, and Josh's father, Steve Powell, was with them. And the weird thing about this clip, you wouldn't know it just by looking at it, but he was always like holding his camera down at his side in a way that was focusing on Susan's body. In a not good way, right? And it got me thinking, Greg, about, we talk about domestic violence, and we have this perception, I think a lot of us who have not experienced it ourselves, what that looks like. And yet, this was a perfect example to me of how Susan was being abused, even without her knowledge, by a relative, a father-in-law, who was sexualizing her. And so, I just thought this would be a great opportunity to bring Kimmy Wolf from the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition in to talk to us a little bit about, what we've seen happen in recent years as far as how can we in our communities here in Utah push back against domestic violence, domestic abuse. So, Kimmy, I appreciate you being willing to jump on the phone and talk to us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me.
So talk to us about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And, Dave and I are both keenly aware of this and involved in this in our own personal and professional lives. Why is it important? And tell us what you're doing with respect to this month.
Sure. So every October nationwide, not here in Utah, Domestic Violence Awareness Month is happening in August. So what we like to do here and across the country, we want to focus on exactly that, domestic violence awareness. And so many people think that awareness is about making sure that people in these types of relationships have access to services or aware of what's out there. But I want to kind of push beyond that thought of just focusing on victims. I want Domestic Violence Awareness Month to be about everyone in the community, how they can raise their own awareness about domestic violence. Because if it's 1 in 3 women here in Utah, then there's two others that need and can also be assets to fighting domestic violence and raising awareness.
There was a really interesting story that I saw on KSL, I think it was last December, Kimmy, where UDVC was talking about, not just, as you point out, services for victims, but also, for people who are the quote-unquote abuser in a situation who might recognize they've got a problem and trying to make sure that they have the ability to maybe get some mental health or some counseling needs. Where do we stand with that currently?
So, just like where there's not enough resources for victims, there's definitely not enough resources and awareness efforts placed on people who use power and control. And, honestly, if you're looking at, the cause of this, why not go directly to the people that are causing harm? But, it's not a pleasant topic to talk about in general, but then we want to talk about people who cause harm. It's even more uncomfortable for people. So the individuals that are ready and being more self-aware of their actions, seeking help, we want to make sure that they have a conduit to the conversations that will help them move forward into their journey to help themselves and help their partners and family.
Kimmy, another difficult conversation we have, and I've certainly had it in terms of being an attorney representing victims, prosecuting perpetrators, and representing perpetrators, is talking to victims about how they can get away from a situation or deal with a situation, because it's easy to say, but it's really hard to do, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And if you ask any one of us, if I just say, ready, set, go, 2 a.m., you need to leave your home. I think many of us will just, stand there and our minds will swirl and we don't even know where to start. Now, imagine if you are responding to a trauma situation and you're fearing for your life and the lives of your children. Now, ready, set, go, leave at 2 a.m. So this is a huge, huge effort done in very trying circumstances. So the effort that it takes to leave a situation, we need to understand the difficulty. We also need to understand why some people choose to stay until the time is right for them.
One of the things that really, I think I went through an educational process with Kimmy as I was studying the Susan Cox Powell case was this idea of risk factors. And I actually had a conversation with somebody from UDVC while I was doing the reporting who said, well, are you familiar with the lethality assessment protocol? And I, at that point in time, had never heard of this. And we've seen, I think, in the years since, efforts by policymakers in Utah, the legislature, others, to make sure that, law enforcement agencies and other social service providers are up to speed on lethality assessment. But I think for the public, there's probably still a real gap in understanding. Can you tell us a little bit about what this lethality assessment is and where we stand as far as making sure that, police and those other people in Utah have access to that tool?
So the lethality assessment, it really is exactly what the name sounds like. It is a assessment of the future chances of lethality for a situation where there is domestic violence occurring. So the lethality assessment is a tool used by first responders, by law enforcement, to assess the likelihood that a victim of domestic violence could face potential lethal harm in the future. And it's more than, it's a series of 11 questions, which sounds so simple, but those 11 questions go beyond asking if this person has physically harmed you. Threats of, homicide, financial troubles, drug abuse, access to firearms. There are so many things that those 11 questions uncover that go beyond physical harm. And I think that's the strength of this assessment. And it also goes to show you that it's not just about physical harm. There is the mentality around people who use power and control in these types of relationships where there are indicators, there are there are situations where that likelihood of increased violence are going to be very apparent to professionals.
Yeah. We're speaking this morning with Kimmy Wolf from the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition. And Kimmy, the lethality assessment hasn't been around for too long yet, and I'm wondering if we're getting any feedback yet, either from the law enforcement community, the courts, or maybe even just the victims groups such as yourself, into whether or not this is making a difference.
I truly do think it's making a difference, because not only are we seeing a dramatic increase in referrals to services, for some agencies that's more than 100% increase. We are seeing agencies interacting with callers for the very first time. Now, this doesn't mean that it's the first incident of domestic violence, but it's the first time that individual, because of a lethality assessment, has been connected with an agency for follow-up services. And I think that really is the most telling indicator for the outcome of this lethality assessment protocol, is that it is uncovering people that have never been connected with services before. And once someone is connected with services, their likelihood of future recurrence of domestic violence and certainly future incidences of harm are going to be dramatically decreased.
Kimmy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It means a lot, and these are conversations we need to have, Greg, in our communities, in our families even, to make sure that we're all playing a role in stopping domestic violence.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition. They do great work, and I think that they're going to continue to do that. Let's hope that they get the resources that they need. We're going to be joined next by KSL TV's Carol Makita, who's going to tell us what to expect as we draw closer to the funeral services for President Russell M. Nelson. Stay with us on KSL News Radio.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City.
11 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Heather Peterson. KSL's top story this hour is breaking news. Authorities have detained a suspect in Washington State in connection to the threat at Ben Lomond High School last week. Ogden City says the person is a juvenile male, so no other details will be released. They say this continues to be an active investigation, but there is no ongoing threat to the school or to the community. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The governor of Illinois is suing to block President Trump's plan to send Texas National Guards to Chicago. This as the president says he's now considering invoking the Insurrection Act. ABC's Karen Travers has more.
The president also said yesterday that leaders in that state, in Illinois and also in Chicago, they're claiming that they have the situation with crime under control, but he said that that is not true, and that is what is justifying his actions of sending that Texas National Guard troops into Chicago. We've also heard the White House say that the president has authority, that he can do this. Of course, there have been setbacks when it has come into legal cases.
Rulings in the court have been mixed. One federal judge blocked a deployment to Portland, while another allowed troops to be sent to Chicago. Your money at this moment: the Dow is down 159 points, the S&P down 31, and the NASDAQ down 166. Coming up, chilly but sunny today. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time, 11:01.
Mornings are for recharging.
And they're for starting your day right.
We volunteer to join you in the car. Get news and weather at 102.7 FM during the most important part of your day.
Andy and Amanda, each morning between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Here's a tale of Becky. Didn't know what to do with new meds prescribed and no real cost clue.
She squinted at prices, that can't be right. Then tapped GoodRx and saw the light.
She could get a deal. Book telehealth if she feels.
Learn about those meds without any stress. That one little app does all the rest. Even my horse downloaded it. Dang, save time and money on prescriptions.
Check GoodRx. GoodRx is not insurance.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities, so do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today.
Visit mintmobile.com/radio.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
At Intermountain Health, we believe life is a circle. May yours surround you with insight, a healthy perspective, trust, and reassurance. The belief that our differences aren't that different, and compassion just when you need it most. Life is a circle. May yours help you live the healthiest life possible. Intermountain Health.
Many Medicare health insurance plans are cutting back on benefits, reducing coverage areas, or increasing costs. The Medicare annual election period begins October 15th. Legacy Insurance provides local agents you can count on to help you get the most of your Medicare benefits and to be there for you over the years. Call 801-281-0066, 801-281-0066, and ask for a real agent. Currently, Legacy Insurance represents 58 organizations, which offer 93 products in your area. You can always contact Medicare.gov, 1-800-MEDICARE, or your local state health insurance program for help with plan choices. There are significant changes to Medicare plans this year. Learn more or request help from a caring and local professional by visiting them online at BecauseWeProtectYou.com. That's BecauseWeProtectYou.com.
1847. Our home Utah takes shape. A century later, Utah's home champion is born. Since 1947, Whipple Service Champions has earned the trust of over 250,000 Utah homeowners, with techs who rise above to deliver award-winning heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical. Championing the spirit of 47, Whipple is offering $47 off any home repair or service, including drain clearings. Act now and call Whipple Service Champions at 801-896-1947 for the win today.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Here's Cormac Bone.
Your drive on westbound I-80 is without delay as you come from Summit County through Parley's Canyon and into the Salt Lake Valley. But if you're traveling on northbound I-15 in Salt Lake City, we're seeing some slowing at the 4th South ramp in downtown. And we're seeing normal congestion on eastbound Pioneer Crossing. That's due to that construction of the flex lanes. The delays start at 7800 West. While you're planning your day, plan for comfort too with the Good Feet store. Find the location nearest you at goodfeetstore.com. Cormac Bone in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny today, but only a high of 67. Then we'll see a little spike. 75 in the forecast tomorrow, 81 on Thursday, then 75 and possibly rain on Friday. Right now it's sunny and 54 degrees. I'm Heather Peterson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
The all-new Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL News Radio.
We are just less than an hour away from the funeral services for President Russell M. Nelson, who died about 10 days ago, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And a lot has happened since then, Dave. There was in fact, General Conference happened, which had already obviously been scheduled. There was a tribute service to him a couple days before conference, which was absolutely beautiful. I think conference went as well as could be expected under the circumstances, and you could just feel his presence there the entire time. Virtually every speaker brought something from President Nelson into their dialogue, and it was really a wonderful event. We've got KSL TV's Carol Makita in studio with us again. Carol, it's so nice to see you. I mean, I don't deal with you. I hadn't dealt with you for years and years, and now we've seen you quite a bit, and it's been lovely, although the circumstances are a little bit unusual. But what can we expect from the service today? What can you tell our listeners about that?
Well, we know from those who have already entered the conference center and are receiving the programs that this will differ from the tribute in that there will be family members speaking. Daughter of President Nelson's and his son will speak, and two daughters will offer the prayers, the opening prayer and the closing prayer, and also the hymn that President Nelson wrote titled Our Prayer to Thee. That's going to be the opening song that the Tabernacle Choir will sing. So this one will have a different look and feel to it. there will be personal stories from the family shared, I'm sure.
Wow. With the gathering of everybody for conference, and I'm sure a lot of conversations that were happening around, kitchen table, and just the amount of public attention on this for you, it's got to be a meaningful story to be covering.
It really has been an opportunity to delve into the life of a remarkable man. And yesterday I had the opportunity, as I went to the viewing, to see some of, the lovely thing that happens with the passing of a church president is that his family members are there greeting all of the public. With the Nelson family, I'm sure several of them came and went, children and grandchildren, but I had an opportunity to greet them and express condolences and to thank them because with television and radio, all of us in church-owned media have called upon them time and time again to talk about their father or grandfather, and they've been so gracious, bringing us into their homes, and we set up lights and rearrange furniture and that sort of thing. And it was an opportunity to say thank you for letting us step into your lives and share your thoughts about a very public man, but you are not necessarily public people. It was it was very reverential. It was very emotional for many people as they passed the casket.
Will we hear today from the other members of his presidency, Dallin Oaks and Eyring? Do you think that they'll be speaking today? Because they spoke at the tribute.
Yes,
I believe
they will be, and I think that's an appropriate thing for them to do also, as will Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, who has spent time close to him for many decades, obviously, but he was just recently acting president of the Quorum of the 12. And if you'll recall, on that first world tour, it was Elder Holland and Sister Holland who went with President and Sister Nelson, circumvented the globe, shall we say. And so they have a particular closeness, and there will be some very sentimental words shared there, too.
You mentioned this hymn. I'm unfamiliar with this hymn that apparently President Nelson wrote himself?
Yes, he did.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, it has been sung before, but this will be a particularly emotional one, I think, to open his funeral service, and very, very appropriate. This is a man gifted in so many ways. Let's not forget, from the time he was very young, singing in school choirs, he had perfect pitch. It was always, Russell, can you start us out? I just, with all of the other gifts, it's quite remarkable. And he found playing the piano, I think, very peaceful moments. And so I can't imagine that this wasn't part of his inspiration, that he felt, I can do this, I should do this. And so that's something that we have as something else lasting from him, that Latter-day Saints around the world will sing this hymn from time to time.
He was such a fascinating man before he became apostle, and obviously before he became the prophet. He had a career in medicine that was like no other. I mean, we talk about the heart valve bypass system that allows doctors to perform surgery on a human heart while a machine keeps the blood circulating and oxygen going, and he was instrumental in developing that and actually using it in his own practice. I mean, he was cutting edge in a way that was, people take that for granted today.
We do, but it was daring then.
Oh, yes.
Because, and I grew up remembering those, my father was a surgeon, so groundbreaking surgeries in all areas. To even touch a human heart was not something that was acceptable. But to Russell M. Nelson, Dr. Nelson, he realized one must do that in order to fix certain problems therein. So he boldly went forth to do what no one else had done, and he would give credit to those who worked with him in many areas. But yes, that brilliance, that inspiration was at work for decades before we recognized him as a church leader. And I remember our former colleague Dwayne Cardall, when he was called as an apostle. Those were the days it was 1984, and Dwayne went to his office at LDS Hospital as he was packing up. So, it was literally out of a profession that he adored, that he was committed to, body and soul, as it were. And then he shifted to become a church leader.
As you were just speaking there, Carol, I was thinking about what a metaphor that is, touching the heart, right? Here's a man who ends up in a position as prophet to so many people, leader of a global church, and in a position to inspire and to touch metaphorically the hearts. Maybe once the practice is over, you're no longer doing that physical touching of the hearts, but what an impact for President Nelson.
Undoubtedly. And there were a couple of times, even as a church leader, that he was given the okay as an apostle to go perform a surgery, as in China. You remember that famous one. It was an opera singer who needed a surgery, and he had become friends with a number of leaders in China, and they begged him to come. And he asked then President Kimball, "What do you think?" And President Kimball said, "Absolutely. How could I not? Because you saved my life by operating on my heart, so go." But yes, he turned his attention to touching people's hearts in a different way. Yeah.
So, Carol, the funeral services, we've only got about a minute left, begin in about an hour at the conference center, and
Yes,
and
12.
people to want to attend that would have probably already got their tickets by now.
Yes, and there will be standby seating, and you can still line up at the Tabernacle. And I assume that you can either watch from there or be told that there are extra seats in the conference center. So if you're still thinking, there's potentially time to make it downtown and see if there's room in the conference center, but it will start at noon.
Wonderful. Carol, thanks for joining us again. And it's so wonderful to see you. And I'm sure you'll be covering this for KSL television as well.
I will.
When we come back, we're going to give you more details about the funeral of President Russell M. Nelson when we come back.
These Cougars are rolling.
Parker Kingston has the first down and more.
Rocking and rolling.
He's going to go 20, 10, touchdown!
The nationally ranked BYU Cougars put their undefeated record on the line Saturday against Arizona.
It's a 2-touchdown quarter.
Listen to Cougar Tracks all this week from 6:30 to 7. And catch every play on Saturday on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars.
It's game time, yeah. We on the way.
KSL News Radio.
Man, I want to tell people how they can look and feel 10 years younger because it's something you and I already know.
We lost weight with the SOTA weight loss program. I lost 34 pounds, 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
And I do feel younger. I have more energy, all because I worked through this wonderful program, SOTA Weight Loss.
And I let go of 70 pounds of fat weight over 5 months. And I actually did get comments, you look incredibly younger. It really felt good.
And I love the example I set for my kids to show them, look, we can celebrate things without having to eat stuff that's bad for our bodies.
And what helps is the accountability. And right now, this is the best way to do it. SOTA's bringing back their most popular offer of the season. Join now, and your partner joins for free in the Partner Program.
So you and your spouse, or you and your best friend, get going with SOTA Weight Loss.
They're the #1 weight loss company in America for client satisfaction and client results. You can find out by going to their website, SOTAweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com. Because SOTA is, say it with me, Amanda, state of the art.
You've got your whole life ahead of you, so choose a Medicare plan you can count on. And that's what you get with a Medicare Advantage plan from United Healthcare. With more than 45 years' experience serving its members, United Healthcare has plans with low monthly premiums that fit your life today and as your needs change tomorrow. The Medicare annual enrollment period ends December 7th, so go to uhc.com/Medicare today. United Healthcare Medicare plans. It's Medicare coverage Utah can count on.
Jump on your brooms and fly to Logan for fantastic fall festivities. It's finally cooling off and we're so glad. Grab your flannel and celebrate harvest season in style, especially October 10th and 11th. Step back in time at the American West Heritage Center for their annual Fall Harvest Festival. See grain threshing with antique machinery, take a pony ride or train ride, and see cider pressing and corn shelling. Or check out the Rock and Gem Show with minerals and rocks and fossils. Oh my! Catch a live performance of the hilarious Broadway hit The Addams Family. Watch it inside the 1923 Ellen Eccles Theater, which really is haunted. Dive into a month full of hocus pocus and hair-raising hauntings on the historic downtown Logan Ghost Tour or at the Haunted River Trail. Traipse through 2 giant corn mazes, visit the North Logan Pumpkin Walk, or check out live theater and music performances and USU football games. Fall in love with fall in Logan. ExploreLogan.com/fall. ExploreLogan.com/fall.
Makita knows that pros never settle, and neither do we. With Makita, you get tools that perform at the highest level on every job without compromise. Makita is for the most detailed pros, expertly engineered to deliver precision, job after job. When your work calls for the best, call on Makita. Makita, built to be the best. Available at the Home Depot.
Tired of hearing scary radio ads about the IRS? Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000 or $500,000, we have a solution. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS with zero risk to you. We have over 1,000 5-star reviews on Google and an A+ with a BBB. End your tax nightmare today by visiting TRA.com or call 800-583-6681. That's 800-583-6681.
You need a deck. You want a pool. We have a plan. If you're looking to start a home improvement project, a discounted home equity line of credit from Zions Bank is an easy, affordable way to turn your home's equity into opportunity. Stop by your local branch to get started or visit zionsbank.com/HELOC to learn more. Loan subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions apply. See banker for details. A division of Zions Bank Corporation, N.A. member FDIC, equal housing lender. NMLS number 467014.
Join Mike Stevens of Capital Wealth Advisors for Retire Right Radio, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's Retire Right Radio with Mike Stevens, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m.
So, you want to be a hero. Here are some ways to get the job. Hunt down that killer shark. Or run into a burning house to save a kitten. Luckily, there's an easier way to become a hero. Call 911 if you see someone experiencing the symptoms of stroke, sudden weakness on one side, or trouble speaking, walking, or seeing. Stroke. Know the signs. Act in time. You'll be a real hero. A message from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke.
Question: what will you find on all over-the-counter or OTC medicine packages to help you choose the right drug and use it safely? The answer: the Drug Facts label. This label lists the medicine's active ingredients and purpose, how much to take, and warnings you should know before using it. Remember, even OTC medicines you buy without a prescription can cause side effects you don't want. So follow the information listed on the Drug Facts label. For more information, visit fda.gov/Drug Facts label. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
The new Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. I'm alongside Dave Colley. And Dave, we are now 40 minutes away from the funeral services of the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Russell M. Nelson. And it was really interesting to talk to Carol Makita in the last segment to share her thoughts about him, about the service, what to expect, and I mean, I'm glad we're breaking away, and I think it's important that we do that. But it sounds like his life could not possibly be broken down in an hour segment. But it was nice that, for me personally, that they had the tribute to him on a Wednesday, that they had conference on Saturday and Sunday, and now in such short order that it was almost like I don't know how to explain it, but a more than just a funeral service. It was like a week of tribute to him.
Yeah, and there's no way, as you point out, Greg, to sum up a person's life. I don't care who you are. A funeral can never do the job of encapsulating a person's impact on the world. But I think, especially as you step back and you look at somebody like President Nelson, who has had such a wide reach, both in a professional career and then also as, an apostle and a leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We heard Carol talking about what we might expect in about 30 minutes or so when the funeral begins, as far as, people who will be potentially attending and speaking. And, this is really an opportunity, I think, for all of us to just kind of pause and reflect on that impact of President Nelson, and also to, pay our respects to those who survive him, his family, his grandkids, kids, all those who cared about him. And so, as you mentioned, the memorial, the General Conference, we've already heard some of these thoughts coming out. In fact, Dallin H. Oaks, for the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, he's made these comments about how much he cared for President Nelson.
We expressed our love for him, our dearest friend, and gave him assurances that we were carrying on with the decisions he had made. He smiled and tried hard to communicate with us. Words were difficult, but his efforts and his smile conveyed the love he felt for us as his counselors and for each of you in this great work.
Dallin Oaks, when I began practicing law, or at least in my early years, was a justice on the Utah Supreme Court. And these two men, Oaks and Dallin Oaks and President Russell M. Nelson, came from these incredibly high professions and at the pinnacle of their professions, and could have easily just gone and retired and had these accolades that would have followed them the rest of their lives, but they chose this service. And these two men, we're told, never went to a meeting when they weren't sitting next to each other. I mean, the camaraderie and the love that those two men had for each other. And Dallin Oaks is likely to be his successor. I know there's a procedure there, and it's early to be talking about that. But it was really, he had to have as much just a hard time speaking as anyone at that event, because it was so shortly after the passing, and of course the conference is 3 days away, and he's going to be arguably presiding over that as well when it happened, and it was just very impressive to listen to some of the speakers at that event, and I can't imagine the days can be any less than that.
I absolutely agree with you, Greg, and I think when you try to put yourself in Elder Oaks' shoes to think about, you just lost somebody, and it doesn't matter that you might have known it was coming, right? Obviously, President Nelson, at his age, you expect that the end of life is coming, and as you heard in those comments, he talked about some of their last interactions together, but then to have to turn around and get up and talk to the world about what that person's life and friendship meant to you, that has to have been very, very hard for Dallin Oaks. And as we know, others that were at conference over the last weekend were also sharing similar thoughts.
Yeah, this is Beth Martineau, who attended conferences last weekend.
I just love President Nelson, and I love the way that he taught. He warmed the hearts of the members of the church and taught us in very specific, simple ways with his invitations, his actions, and his promised blessings that really warmed our hearts and brought us closer to our Savior, Jesus Christ, and I will miss him. I will miss him a lot.
And how does a man who's 99, 100, 101 years old continue to touch young people? He had no problem with that. I mean, I think that a lot of the youth in the church still admired him, followed him. And, another thing, among these incredible accomplishments, he wrote a song that the Tabernacle Choir is going to perform at the outset of the funeral today. That he wrote, and it's now going to be in the hymnal, I assume, and it'll be part of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints culture. I mean, the man just had gifts that never end.
Yeah, I mean, we just heard KSL TV religion reporter Carol Makita talking to us about that musical number and some of what we expect to see in just about 30 minutes as we approach the funeral service for President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, Carol, such a wonderful reporter, put together, a great piece that aired over the weekend. And I think it's worth dipping into that to just kind of hear her walk us through the life and accomplishments of President Nelson.
A life of service, of ministry, of faith. Last week, President Russell M. Nelson, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, passed away at the age of 101. Healing, both physically and spiritually, serving as a renowned open-heart surgeon before becoming an apostle in 1984. He became president of the church in 2018. I'm Jeff Kaplan. In this KSL News Radio special, we take a look back on the storied life of a man well-known, well-loved, and well-respected within the church. and the broader community.
That was beautiful. I did want to play the piece from Carol Makita. I jumped ahead of that.
Speaker had something special and personal to talk about President Nelson. And as you say, unique. I think from the very beginning of his presidency, everything was unique. And so this carries right on through that.
I was loosely counting. This wasn't an exact numerical count, but the word love was used at least 36 times, and 12 of those by President Oaks, who started off the broadcast.
And I think that's a beautiful way to remember him. Those words, he constantly was talking about the love of Jesus Christ and our love one to another. And so it's not surprising that no one will forget that.
Greg, we're taking a look now just here in the studio at a camera shot from inside the conference center on Temple Square, where we can see already a crowd moving into the seats there for the service that we know will begin in about 30 minutes. And of course, we will be walking you up right to the top of the hour and to the start of that service right here on Inside Sources.
Yeah, we will. And it's such a beautiful venue. I mean, you look at that and the camera angle, and of course the choir has not taken their seats. I am assuming they're going to be at the forefront there, but I assume also that tickets were kind of hard to get for something like this. This is something else. And a beautiful venue, beautiful. I can't imagine this is anything other than a wonderful service. And Carol Makita did share with us a little bit about what to expect. Some family members may be speaking. The musical number that he wrote will start it. And one of his family members, I think one of his daughters, may be giving a prayer. We'll also hear from Elder Oaks and Eyring, who will be speaking to us as well. So a lot to be heard, a lot to follow up on, and we'll come back in just a few minutes.
11:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Heather Peterson. KSL's top local story this hour. In just about 30 minutes, a public funeral service will be held for President Russell M. Nelson, the late president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're expecting all 21,000 seats of the conference center to be filled when church leaders and the Nelson family look back on his life accomplishments and teachings.
One of the easiest ways to identify a true follower of Jesus Christ is how compassionately that person treats other people.
The funeral begins at noon. You can listen to the entire service live here on KSL News Radio. Our special coverage begins in just a moment. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Senate lawmakers are expected to vote again today on a funding bill to end the government shutdown. Right now, neither side appears willing to budge. Here's what House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries had to say.
This fight is about the health care of the American people. It's Republicans, in terms of the leadership, that is missing in action, that is currently on vacation, that has canceled votes, and that refuses to deal with the health care crisis that Republicans have created.
Republicans in Congress maintain this is the same continuing resolution Democrats previously approved, and they need 5 Democrats to switch their votes to pass this spending plan. Your money at this moment, the Dow is down 124 points, the S&P is down 27, and the NASDAQ is down 150. Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Mountain America. Turn everyday spending into an extraordinary escape. Here's Ricky Meese.
Drive along I-15 in the valley, and if you're traveling north or southbound, you're good to go between Ogden and Provo. The rest of your Salt Lake County freeways crash-free and delay-free. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunshine and a high of 67 degrees today. Then the temperature will start to rise. 75 on Wednesday, 81 on Thursday before we see some possible rain showers on Friday. Right now it's mostly sunny and 54 degrees. I'm Heather Peterson from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at KSLNewsRadio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Remembering President Russell M. Nelson. Special coverage on KSL News Radio.
And this is a special half hour of coverage remembering President Russell M. Nelson. We're commercial free until noon when the funeral of President Nelson begins. You'll hear the services right here on KSL News Radio. We're seeing the area around the conference center and inside the conference center, Dave, and it's packed with people. They're making their way in to pay their respects. Well, let's check in with KSL News Radio's Don Brinkerhoff. Don, thanks for joining us this morning. And are you there in the conference center?
I'm just outside the conference center on West Temple, Greg, and right now the crowds have kind of thinned down a little bit. They were pretty heavy about half an hour ago, and there's still a few people that are coming in, but a lot of those that are going to be attending are already in their seats, as you can see on the monitor there, as people are filtering in. You know, we talked to Ella Powell, who doesn't live very far away, but she just felt like she really needed to be here, and she shared her favorite President Nelson moment.
It's not even a talk he gave. It was when Joseph B. Wortham was giving a talk, and he was shaking as he was trying to finish his talk, and President Nelson got up and just studied him. I feel like that just showed so much about his character. He was an apostle at the time, but it just showed who he was and the love that he had for all the people around him.
And the interesting thing about that is Ella was not the only person that shared that as their favorite President Nelson moment this morning. As we prepare for the funeral, we know that there will be some family members speaking. President Oaks is expected to speak, as well as Elder Eyring and Elder Holland. We'll continue with the coverage as things go along. Greg?
Thanks, Don. That was KSL News Radio's Don Brinkerhoff, who's there at the conference center joining us this morning. Deseret News editor Sarah Jane Weaver says temples were a big part of President Nelson's ministry. She spoke with KSL TV's Dan Rascone and Tamara Vaifanua.
Well, President Nelson's ministry has been so remarkable. He became president and prophet at the church in 2018 at the age of 93. And I think anyone can number the thing from announcing 200 temples or to asking members to use the correct and full name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to so many other remarkable things. He traveled to 35 countries in 18 months. Wow. After he first became prophet. So his ministry was fast-paced and brought a great unitedness within the Church of Jesus Christ.
So tell us about that. You got to travel to many of these sites that he went on. Tell me about that energy, that enthusiasm that he had to get out and visit the members worldwide at 93 years old. Yeah. I had a chance to go out on the South Pacific trip to Tonga and Samoa.
Dan comes back exhausted.
I know. I can't even move. 93, that's incredible.
Yeah, so he was 93, and he was not acting 93. He would get up and he would travel to a country, and he would typically meet with government leaders, and then he would meet with youth or young adults. He cared so much about that demographic. And then he would offer a member devotional in that nation. Then he would go back to the hotel, go to bed, get up the next morning, and fly someplace else. Wow. And so you had to have your running shoes on, and you had to keep going. And this is someone who had such great capacity. He is a pioneering world-class surgeon. But who also had a great level of humility. I remember on the very first tour where he set out from Salt Lake and said, I'm going to circle the globe. And he did, in fact, go across the world. He started in England and went to Jerusalem and made a couple stops in Africa, and then went to India and Thailand and Hong Kong, and then went to Hawaii. So he went all the way around, and for a man who was so well revered and so well respected, anytime he would walk into a congregation, everyone stands for him out of respect for who he was and for the position he held. And yet on that very first trip, one of the first things we noticed is that he would kneel down for children.
get eye to eye with them. So in your role, as you followed along and were covering this, what were some of those behind the scenes moments that you never really were able to report on, but really occurred to you about who he is as a person?
Until just over a year ago, I served as editor of the Church News. In that capacity, I was assigned to follow. I didn't really travel with President Nelson. We just tried to keep up with him. But I was assigned to follow him and write about his ministry. And there were so many sweet, remarkable things. I remember being in Jerusalem and meeting a little girl, and her parents were house help. They lived in Tel Aviv. Her name was Ella, and she was telling us, I am going to meet President Nelson. And we said, oh yeah, you are. What's going to happen is he's going to wave to the crowd, and it's going to feel like you're meeting him personally. But it actually didn't happen that way at all, because at the end of the event, he went down into the crowd, and he saw that little girl, and he put his hands right behind her head. And you think about that. You think about this world religious leader who is meeting with the leaders and dignitaries and the most important people around the world, who takes a minute for the least of those among us. I mean, this is a little girl. She was in a country without status. Her parents were from the Philippines. She couldn't go to school. And yet she did not evade the notice of a prophet.
Wow, that's incredible. Let's talk a little bit about his accomplishments here, because we're talking about a 7-year ministry here as president of the church. It's pretty amazing what he was able to accomplish here, especially the changes he made. I mean, there were some pretty significant, we've talked about the temples already as in regards to some 200 temples. He's done a lot of things. And one thing in our business, we like short names. But he took the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints and got rid of the Mormon aspect of it. And really, even the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is changed.
I don't think we can underestimate what a monumental task this was. President Nelson said in Latter-day Revelation, the Lord told Joseph Smith what the name of the church should be. And he was determined to use the full and correct name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And in those early days, it did not roll off our tongues that easy. That felt long. And you think about all that entailed. That was every email address for every church employee across the globe. That was things like the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, the Mormon Channel. There were a lot of names that had to be changed. And he was confident that could be done because he had confidence in Latter-day Saints across the globe. And that is something that is so indicative of everything he stood for. He had great confidence in the members of the church, and so he asked them, I want you to use the correct and full name of the church, and they did. And he actually promised them that as they did that, other people would follow. I mean, for you and I, it's amazing for us to think of how the media have responded to this. But they are using the full name of the church now in their reports. So what a great and amazing undertaking he took, and he was successful in that.
This is a special half hour of coverage remembering Russell M. Nelson. We're commercial free until noon. I'm here with Greg Skordas from Inside Sources. I'm KSL News Radio's Dave Cawley. And Greg, what a day to be on the air here.
Oh, seriously. I mean, and it's just a beautiful setting in the conference center. KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera has been talking to people that they have been arriving for the funeral. Eric, what are people telling you about what they remember about President Nelson?
Greg, people have been talking about, what a great leader he was. People have been telling me, the messages that they take away from his legacy are those of understanding and of coming together and talking things through, even among differences. That's really kind of the overall arcing message I've been feeling from the people I've been catching on the way in.
Have you heard from any folks who've traveled a ways to be here today?
Absolutely, yeah. I've talked to a couple of people who are from the East Coast, as far as New York. A couple of people from out of the country as well, and yeah, it's definitely a big stream of people right now. I'm standing actually right at the corner of North Temple and Main Street, kind of right by the entrance. And yeah, it's just a mad dash in. It's been kind of tricky actually to talk to people because it is first come, first serve, I believe. So people are trying to make their way in, but definitely a steady stream coming in.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let's go back to Don Brinkerhoff. Don, are you still with us? Oh, well, I guess we're not going back to Don Brinkerhoff.
We'll get him. We'll get Don.
We'll get.
Yeah.
We'll get.
I mean,
with
part
him
of the
later.
challenge with a situation like this, as you just heard Eric say, is reporters are rushing to try to get the comment from the folks who are headed into the conference center, and they're going to dump their phone call to go get the comment.
Right.
But we will get back to Don Brinkerhoff in just a minute. Greg, as we look ahead to the services for President Russell M. Nelson here in just a little over 15 minutes, I think it's interesting to look back and think about President Nelson, obviously over the course of his ministry, gave many, many, many speeches at General Conference and other places. And he did that right up until, he was 100 years old and he was still getting up and talking. And there was one particular talk that he gave at General Conference that had a message for young people. But I think before we get there, I am hearing in my ear that we do have Don. So let's grab Don Brinkerhoff really quick. Don, are you there?
Yeah, how are you doing, Dave?
Great. So what are you seeing since the last time we chatted with you?
Well, the crowds have really slowed down now. There's probably less than a dozen people on the sidewalk as they head over to the conference center. Of course, with the funeral beginning in less than 20 minutes, most of them are already in their seats. We did talk to a couple here, the Michael Kelly and his wife, who are over from the British Isles visiting, and he had kind of a unique experience with President Nelson.
We're over from the London area, and so we've been here for conference weekend, and it's just been a good opportunity for us to say our final farewell to him. I'd have to go back nearly 40 years when I first met him as a missionary in Anaheim, California, when I served as a missionary. And so, yeah, he shared something very touching. He had just been to Ireland at the time and shared some personal stuff, what was going on. That was a very touching moment for me.
One woman we talked to said, even though she never met President Nelson, just the look of love in his eyes made her know that he had a love for all people around the world. And as he announced temples, the twinkle and joy that he would get in his eyes as he announced temples to bring those buildings and those sacred structures closer to the people, and truly made this into a worldwide church. Dave?
Don, as we are preparing here, I'm looking at a screen showing a view inside the conference center, and the crowd that had been, even 5 minutes ago, kind of milling around, they are now pretty much all in their seats. We can see it looks like the choir is also in front of the organ, sitting down, folks up on the stand. And I'm just curious if you have any indication from your perspective, if it looks like family members or others that we would expect to be seeing maybe coming to speak, if they've arrived there at the conference center as of yet.
So a few minutes ago, 2 large buses and a processional of about half a dozen cars pulled up to the west side of the conference center. I believe that was probably family members and other general authorities, and some of the speakers and some of those who will be participating were probably in that processional. Those buses and cars stopped on West Temple, right across or right next to the conference center. They were there for a few minutes as people got out, and then they pulled off. So I do believe that those who are speaking are probably arrived. That was probably them as they were pulling up.
Wonderful. Don, thank you so much.
That was KSL Radio's Don Brinkerhoff. And President Nelson was the longest living leader of the church, having celebrated his 101st birthday just last month.
Wow.
A year ago, Carol Makita sat down with several of his adult children to celebrate his 100th birthday.
I had the opportunity of visiting with some of President Nelson's children and grandchildren before his 100th birthday celebration.
If I have to think of something that's going to stay with me forever, it's that family comes first.
As a woman, appreciate his perspective on
females and women in the church. I just love the confidence that he has in us and that he helps us feel in ourselves.
He's so good at making each person feel seen and important. They get a birthday card, they get a Christmas card individually, and when they see him, he says, oh, there's Bryce or there's Porter, and he makes each person just feel like they matter, and you can feel his love. And
always made it a priority to at least have one big family function where monthly we'd get together, celebrate the birthdays. We all know he's just so busy, but he always made time for family, and that hasn't changed.
He takes great care to call us together when he can. When we are with him, that daddy heart is still there.
My most precious lesson that I learned from my parents is to love the Lord, put him first, and watch miracles happen.
Today, President Nelson's family members are remembering his words. Families are eternal. Carol Makita, KSL 5 News.
Greg, I am personally reflecting here as we're just a little over 10 minutes out from the beginning of the services for President Russell M. Nelson today about what really stood out to me when he took over in the role of president of the church. Very quickly, we saw this announcement from the church and from President Nelson that they were going to move away from using nicknames in reference to the name of the church, and particularly Mormons, we saw kind of fall to the wayside as the church and President Nelson moved to focus on the full name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
KSL News Radio's Adam Small has more on that.
I belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Over the years, a lot of members grew accustomed to using shorter alternatives rather than the full 11-syllable name of the church, partly because those nicknames were used so prevalently by non-members. But in just his second General Conference as church president, President Nelson pled with members to curb that trend.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, or the Church of the Latter-day Saints, the most glaring omission is the absence of the Savior's name.
President Nelson went on to say of Jesus Christ, quote, "When we omit his name from his church, we are inadvertently removing him as the central focus of our lives."
The rest of the world may or may not follow our lead in calling us by the correct name, but it is disingenuous for us to be frustrated if most of the world calls the church and its members by the wrong names if we do the same.
President Nelson said it would take everyone to help correct how people refer to the church, but promised if they did their best,
he whose church this is will pour down his power and blessings upon the heads of the Latter-day Saints, the likes of which we have never seen.
People quickly heeded President Nelson's words. There was a huge shift in how everyday members referred to and introduced themselves as members of the church. Even the church's official website, which long stood as LDS.org, was quickly changed to churchofjesuschrist.org.
What's in a name? When it comes to the name of the Lord's church, the answer is everything.
Adam Small, KSL News Radio.
And one of President Russell M. Nelson's enduring legacies, if you recall, Dave, will be his impact on Latter-day Saints overseas. At KSL News Radio's Becky Bruce has more on that.
From his very first conference talk as an ordained member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Quorum of the 12 Apostles, President Russell M. Nelson signaled an understanding of the importance of a global ministry.
He directs the affairs of his church by the power of the priesthood and by revelation through prophets who proclaim his doctrine to all people of the world.
It started even before his calling as an apostle. President Nelson spoke about his medical degree as a passport that took him all over the world.
In another nation, our compassion was stretched almost to the breaking point as we yearned to help countless people in need.
His medical experience combined with his faith to open doors. Elder Neil L. Anderson noted in a 2017 conference talk, he took President Spencer W. Kimball's instructions to heart.
Among the countries President Kimball specifically mentioned was China, declaring we should be of service to the Chinese, We should learn their language. We should pray for them and help them.
That was when President Nelson decided to start learning Mandarin.
Dr. Nelson's desire to follow the prophet led to Dr. Wu visiting Salt Lake City and Dr. Nelson traveling to China to give lectures and perform surgical operations.
The impact of that relationship reverberated through his first year as an apostle.
The last surgical operation he ever performed was in the People's Republic of China.
1985 was a busy year for President Nelson. Along with that surgery, he received the assignment to look after church affairs in Africa and Europe at a critical time.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
A time many mark as the beginning of the end of the Cold War. The assignment to open communist countries still under the thumb of the Soviet Union to the preaching of the gospel.
A wall has crumbled in Berlin.
Just a few short years later, then second counselor in the first presidency, Thomas S. Monson, spoke of the hope brought about by so much change in the region.
In Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and in the German Democratic Republic, the bells of freedom have sounded, heralding the beginning of a new day in our time.
As chairman of the Missionary Executive Council, President Nelson was an instrumental part of a major announcement in 2012 from then president of the church, Thomas S. Monson, that young men could serve as missionaries at age 18, and
that able, worthy young women who have the desire to serve may be recommended for missionary service beginning at age 19 instead of age 21.
President Nelson continued to focus on his international ministry after he was ordained and set apart as church president in 2018, embarking almost right away on a world tour. He came back home to Utah, addressing Latter-day Saints youth in a worldwide devotional, calling them to share the gospel.
Every one of our Heavenly Father's children on both sides of the veil deserves to hear the message of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. They decide for themselves if they want to know more.
Over the years, he visited more than 130 countries and continued to speak throughout his ministry about the importance of sharing the gospel, as he did in this 2020 General Conference talk.
Each of us has a divine potential because each is a child of God. Each is equal in his eyes. The implications of this truth are profound.
Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio.
Greg, I'm sitting here just reflecting. So Becky did such a nice job putting that piece together. And as she's walking through decade by decade, I'm thinking to myself, you could pluck out any single decade and just focus on that, and it would tell the story of a phenomenal life. And yet we have this amazing span for President Russell M. Nelson.
And he was in his mid-90s when he assumed the presidency. And one of the takes on him at the time was, don't expect a lot of change.
Right.
And what somebody missed the mark on that one, because Becky just went through change after change after change, and they were innovative changes. They were inspired changes. And they were things that, looking back now, we think, of course.
As a longtime observer of, General Conference and things, one of the things I always listen for is, how does the audience in the tabernacle or in the conference center react? And in Becky's piece there, you heard President Nelson talking about the changes to missionary service and the gasps. I think excited gasps on the part of the folks who were hearing him make those statements. And that will probably be part of, really, I think, the enduring legacy of President Nelson is some of those changes.
And the travel. I mean, he was not shy about moving around and traveling around the world, going to countries that we hadn't considered before and going to regions we hadn't considered before. And the temple building under his leadership was something it was almost unheard of, what the church did to expand its reach around the world in under his legacy.
There's such a macro. I mean, you talk about traveling the world and building temples, and that is such a broad impact. And yet, at the same time today, as we've been in this special half hour of coverage leading up to this funeral service that will begin in just about 5 minutes here, a little less than 5 minutes, what really stood out to me was Don Brinkerhoff and Eric Cabrera are reporters there at Temple Square, hearing the very personal stories that they were getting from folks who were heading into that service about, how their lives were individually touched by President Nelson at different points in time. Just really remarkable.
Let's go back and revisit with Eric Cabrera. Eric, are you still with us?
I am, Greg.
So tell us what the scene is now. It looks like we're about 3 minutes from starting.
Yep. So the flow of people is definitely starting to trickle down a little bit. I've seen families, missionaries, and members from across Utah and beyond. They're all moving quietly, but with a real sense of unity. And sister missionaries greet attendees just outside the conference center. And the tone here, I would describe it as reverent but hopeful. People I've spoken with say they're smiling through tears, comforted by the belief that they'll see each other and President Nelson again one day. I actually met Elder Campos, a young missionary who joined the church just 2 years ago.
I've been a convert for almost 2 years in November, so it's kind of sad that this is the first time I see him, but it's also amazing just to see the whole process too. I think a lot of it is his calmness. He's just been a great leader, inspirational.
And then I met a 21-year-old named Esther. She told me it feels bittersweet, tender to say goodbye, but full of gratitude for what she calls President Nelson's calming, inspiring influence. And she traveled as well hours from down south.
Eric, I'm wondering, standing out on Temple Square today or outside the conference center, if this had been a few days ago and we were dealing with a deluge of rain, it might have been a different scene with folks, darting in and out.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm looking out the window at Broadcast House here today, and it's a beautiful blue sky day, cool fall temperatures. It seems like it's really just the perfect backdrop for this kind of thing.
It is. It couldn't be better. I love this weather as well. I'm all about the fall weather, So a little light coat, and you're good to go today.
Thanks. That was KSL News Radio's Eric Cabrera. And Dave, I have to say, as we lead up to the proceedings, it looks like the standing room only. I mean, it looks it would have been hard to get a ticket for that. The venue's beautiful. The Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square is in place. Beautiful setting there. And there's nothing quite like. And my mom was a musician, and she played the organ, and I love the pipes. I just you can't see those and just be touched by those, and the music that comes out of those. I actually think my mother was allowed to play that organ once. So I think about her.
And if you've never sat in there, for folks who have not been inside the conference center in downtown Salt Lake City, it's amazing when that music just starts to fill that space, that hall, and we know that is going to be happening here in just a matter of moments as the service for President Russell M. Nelson gets underway. Greg, thank you so much for letting me be part of this.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.